I was sent to Area 51. After a crash, what the surviving alien told me about. God still haunts me. Okay, listen. Before I start, I need you to do something for me. Comment right now where you're listening to this. Your bedroom, your car, walking your dog, middle of the night with headphones on, I don't care. Just tell me. Because there's a very real chance this recording disappears by tomorrow morning. There's a chance I disappear by tomorrow morning. And if that happens, I need to know that at least one person out there heard what I'm about to tell you. That at least someone knows the truth before they erase me and bury this story so deep that not even God himself could dig it up. And yeah, I said God. We're going to talk a lot about God, or what I thought was God. Just comment where you are, please. My name is Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison, or it was. Anyway, I don't know what I am anymore. 34 years old, 12 years in the United States Air Force, specialized as a combat medic. I've pulled shrapnel out of 19-year-old kids in Kandahar. I've held pressure on wounds that no human being should ever have to see. I've watched good men die in my arms in the sand, calling for their mothers, calling for God, calling for anyone to make the pain stop. I thought I'd seen everything. I thought I knew what horror looked like. I grew up in Amarillo, Texas. Good Christian family. My old man was a Baptist pastor. I wore a silver cross around my neck since I was 7 years old. Never took it off, not even in the shower. I believed. I really believed. After everything I saw overseas, that faith was the only thing keeping me standing. And now I don't know what the hell I believe anymore. It was April 19th, 2024. I was home on medical leave, nothing serious. Just mandatory psych evaluation after a rough deployment. My wife Sarah was asleep next to me. Our daughter Emma's room right down the hall. Normal suburban house in Las Vegas, Nevada. Yeah, I know. Ironic given what happened. I was having one of those nights where you can't shut your brain off, you know. Staring at the ceiling, listening to Sarah breathe, thinking about the faces of the guys who didn't make it home. And then my phone rang. Not a normal ring. It was a specific tone. One that I'd only heard 3 times in my entire military career. A tone that meant someone very high up the chain of command needed me immediately for something classified. The screen just said, "Restricted" in red letters. My hands were already shaking when I answered it. It was 2:47 a.m. I'll never forget that time. 2:47 a.m., and my entire understanding of reality was about to shatter into a million pieces. The voice on the other end was mechanical, processed, like it was being run through some kind of scrambler, but I could tell it was military. You develop an ear for that. Staff Sergeant Morrison, confirmation code Tango 79er Alpha Delta. That was my personal security code, something only 3 people in the entire Air Force should have had access to. I sat up in bed, trying not to wake Sarah. "Confirmed," I whispered. "This is Morrison." There was a pause, just static, and the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then the voice came back. "Código Vermelho. You have 30 minutes to report to Nellis Air Force Base, Gate 7, North Entrance. Bring your military ID and nothing else. No phone, no wallet, no personal items. Tell no one where you are going. This is a direct order from Northcom. Failure to comply will result in immediate court-martial. Do you understand?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. Code red. In 12 years, I'd never actually heard those words outside of training scenarios. Yes, I understand," I managed to say. My throat was dry. Mouth tasted like copper. "What's the situation? What kind of medical emergency are we?" The voice cut me off. "You'll be briefed on arrival. 29 minutes, Sergeant. Gate 7. Come alone." And then the line went dead, just like that. I sat there in the dark, holding my phone, watching the screen fade to black, and I swear to God, or whatever's out there, I almost didn't go. I almost woke up Sarah. Told her something crazy was happening, maybe even called my CO to verify the order. But you don't question a code red. You don't hesitate. That's how people die. That's how missions fail. So I got up, moving on autopilot, muscle memory from a decade of emergency calls in the middle of the night. I threw on my uniform, grabbed my ID from the dresser. Sarah stirred a little, but didn't wake up. I stood in Emma's doorway for maybe 10 seconds, watching her sleep with her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. She was 6 years old, perfect and innocent, and completely unaware that her daddy was about to see something that would make him question whether innocence even exists in this universe. I kissed Sarah on the forehead. She mumbled something, probably thought I was just getting water. I wanted to shake her awake. Wanted to tell her I loved her. Wanted to say, just in case I don't come back, remember that everything I did was for you and Emma. But I didn't. I just grabbed my keys and walked out into the Nevada night. It was cold. Way colder than it should have been for April. The streetlights were buzzing, that weird electrical hum that gets under your skin. And as I backed out of the driveway, I saw something that I keep thinking about even now. There was a car parked 3 houses down. Dark sedan, tinted windows, engine running, no headlights, just sitting there. I'd never seen that car in our neighborhood before, and I haven't seen it since, but I saw it that night, watching, waiting. I should have known right then that this wasn't just another emergency medical call. I should have known that whatever was waiting for me at Nellis was going to change everything. The drive to the base took 18 minutes. I kept the radio off, just listened to the engine and tried to keep my breathing steady. Combat medic training. Control your heart rate, control your fear, stay sharp. But my hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I kept thinking about that mechanical voice, the way it said, "Come alone," the way it mentioned Northcom, which handles aerospace warning and control. Why would they need a combat medic in the middle of the night? I ran through possibilities in my head. Nuclear incident? No. They'd mobilize whole teams. Biological weapon? Maybe. But again, I wouldn't be the only one called. Contamination scenario at one of the test sites? Getting warmer. But something about this felt different, felt bigger. By the time I pulled up to Gate 7 at exactly 3:14 a.m., 1 minute before my deadline, I had convinced myself this was some kind of drill or psych test. Some brass somewhere wanted to see how I'd respond to stress after my psych eval. That's what I told myself. Because the alternative, that this was real, that something had actually happened that required this level of secrecy, that was too terrifying to consider. 2 men were waiting at the gate, not regular Air Force security. These guys were different. Black tactical gear, no unit patches, no name tags, faces hidden behind mirrored visors even though it was the middle of the night. They didn't ask for my ID. One of them just pointed to a blacked-out SUV idling about 20 feet away. "Vehicle. Now." That was it. No explanation, no greeting, nothing. I walked to the SUV, legs feeling like concrete, and got in the back seat. There was another man already inside, civilian clothes, thick glasses, laptop open. He looked terrified, wouldn't make eye contact with me. And sitting across from us were 2 more of those tactical guys, absolutely silent, weapons resting casually across their laps. The driver pulled away before I even had my seatbelt on. We drove deeper into the base, past hangars I'd never seen before, past checkpoints with guards who just waved us through without even looking. And then we stopped at a helicopter pad where a Black Hawk was already spinning up, rotors beating the air like the wings of some massive predator. One of the tactical guys leaned close to me and said just 4 words that made my blood turn to ice. "You're going to Dreamland. Dreamland. Area 51. Groom Lake. Whatever you want to call it. The place that doesn't officially exist. The place that shows up as a blank spot on every map, surrounded by restricted airspace and guards authorized to use lethal force. I'd heard stories, of course. Every military guy has. Experimental aircraft, stealth technology, Cold War paranoia, but those were just stories, legends, the kind of stuff you joke about over beers. And now I was being loaded onto a helicopter in the middle of the night by men with no names, sitting next to a scientist who looked like he was about to have a heart attack, heading toward a place that supposedly doesn't exist. They handed me a black hood. "Put it on. Don't remove it until we tell you." I pulled the hood over my head, and everything went dark. All I could hear was the roar of the rotors and my own breathing, fast and shallow inside the fabric. All I could feel was the vibration of the helicopter lifting off, carrying me away from everything I knew, everything I understood. And all I could think was, what the hell did I just agree to? What am I about to see? I clutched the cross around my neck, whispered a prayer I'd said 1,000 times. "Lord, give me strength. Protect me from evil. Guide me through darkness." I didn't know it then, but that was the last real prayer I'd ever say. Because what I was about to see in Area 51 wasn't evil, it was something so much worse. It was the truth. The flight lasted 43 minutes. I know because I counted every single one of them inside that hood, trying to keep my mind from spiraling into panic. You ever been in complete darkness while something loud and violent shakes you around? It does things to your head, makes you think about mortality in ways you don't want to. I could hear the scientist next to me breathing fast, almost hyperventilating. At one point, I heard him whisper something that sounded like a prayer in a language I didn't recognize. The tactical guy said nothing, absolutely nothing. Just the roar of the rotors and the feeling of moving through space with no idea where the hell I was going or what I was heading toward. My hand kept going to that cross around my neck, rubbing it between my thumb and finger like a worry stone. I'd done that same thing in Kandahar when the mortars were falling. Funny how we reach for God when we're scared, right? Like some deep programming we can't shut off. Keep that thought in your head. We're gonna come back to it. When the helicopter finally touched down, I felt hands grab my arms. Not rough, but firm, professional. Military hands. They guided me out onto solid ground, and I could feel wind whipping around me. That dry desert wind that tastes like dust and distance. Someone removed the hood, and the light hit me like a physical force. Bright white industrial lights, the kind they use for night operations, turning everything into harsh shadows and bleached colors. I blinked hard, trying to adjust, and when my vision cleared, I saw where I was. We'd landed on a concrete pad surrounded by low buildings that looked like they'd been designed by someone who hated beauty. Gray, rectangular, no windows, covered in antennas and satellite dishes. Beyond them, I could see the dark shape of mountains against a sky that was just starting to show the first hint of dawn. And past the buildings, maybe half a mile away, were the hangars. Massive. I mean absolutely massive. Each one big enough to hide a football stadium. They had that weird heat shimmer around them even in the cold air, like reality was bending near them. And I could hear something. A low hum so deep it was more feeling than sound. It made my teeth ache. Staff Sergeant Morrison. The voice came from my left. I turned and saw a man in an Air Force uniform, but wrong somehow. The insignia was different, simplified. His name tag just said Bradley, with no first name, no unit designation. He was maybe 60 years old, gray hair cut military short, eyes that had seen things that aged him beyond his years. Behind him stood 6 more of those tactical guys in black, forming a semicircle like they were expecting me to run. I'm Colonel Bradley. I'm going to brief you on why you're here, and then you're going to make a choice. But first, I need you to understand something. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell coffee on his breath. Everything you see from this point forward is classified at a level that doesn't have a name. You won't find it in any manual. You won't see it on any clearance document. What you're about to be exposed to has been seen by fewer than 200 people in the entire history of this facility. Most of those people are dead now. Not because we killed them, but because knowledge this heavy has a way of destroying people from the inside out. Do you understand what I'm telling you? I didn't understand. Not really. But I nodded anyway because that's what you do when a colonel asks you a question. Yes, sir. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Bradley studied my face for a long moment, like he was trying to read something written there. Then he gestured toward one of the buildings. Walk with me. We started moving. The tactical guys falling into formation around us, boots crunching on gravel. The scientist from the helicopter was being led in a different direction by other personnel. He looked back at me once, eyes wide with something I couldn't quite identify. Fear? No, it was deeper than that. It was the look of a man who knew he was walking toward something that would change him forever. 6 hours ago, Bradley said as we walked, one of our deep space monitoring stations picked up an object entering Earth's atmosphere at an angle and velocity that should have been impossible. It didn't burn up. It didn't disintegrate. It slowed down in ways that violate every law of physics we understand. And then it crashed approximately 90 miles north of here, in an area so remote that God himself probably doesn't know it exists. Crashed, I repeated. My medical training was kicking in, trying to make sense of what he was telling me. So we're talking about survivors? Aircraft accident? I'll need to know what kind of aircraft, what kind of fuel systems, potential contamination. Bradley stopped walking and turned to face me. The expression on his face made my words die in my throat. It wasn't an aircraft, Sergeant, at least not one made by any nation on this planet. Our recovery team reached the crash site at 03:20 hours. They found wreckage unlike anything in our database, materials that we can't identify, technology that we can't comprehend. And yes, they found a survivor. He paused, watching my reaction. One survivor. Still alive when they brought it here. Still alive right now, about 300 feet below where we're standing. And it's dying, Sergeant Morrison. Dying fast. Which is why we need you. The world seemed to tilt sideways for a second. I actually had to put my hand out to steady myself against one of the building walls. Sir, what are you saying? What do you mean, it? Are we talking about a foreign pilot? Russian? Chinese? But even as I said it, I knew. Deep down in some animal part of my brain that's older than language, I knew what he was about to say. Bradley's voice dropped lower, barely above a whisper, like he was confessing a sin. We brought you here because you have the highest level medical training of anyone with proper security clearance within a 4-hour radius. We brought you here because your psychological profile suggests you can handle extreme stress without breaking. And we brought you here because, according to your file, you're a man of strong faith. You believe in God. You believe in a higher power. You're going to need that belief, Sergeant. You're going to need to hold on to it with everything you have, because what you're about to see is going to test that faith in ways you can't imagine. He stepped even closer. So close I could see the tiny burst blood vessels in his eyes, the exhaustion written in every line of his face. We need you to keep it alive long enough to communicate with us. We need you to provide medical care to something that isn't human. Can you do that? My mouth had gone completely dry. I tried to swallow and couldn't. The hum from those distant hangars seemed to be getting louder. Or maybe it was just my imagination. Maybe it was the sound of my entire worldview cracking like thin ice. I thought about Sarah and Emma back home, probably waking up right now. Emma asking where Daddy went. I thought about my father's sermons, about the cross around my neck, about every Sunday school lesson that told me humans were special, created in God's image, alone in the universe. And I thought about that look in the scientist's eyes, that look of a man walking towards something that would change him. I need to see it, I heard myself say. Before I agree to anything, I need to see what we're dealing with. Bradley nodded like he'd expected that answer. That's what I hoped you'd say. But Sergeant, before we go down there, I need you to sign something. One of the tactical guys stepped forward holding a tablet. The screen showed a document with text so dense it looked like solid black. This is a non-disclosure agreement unlike any you've ever seen. It's not just your standard security clearance paperwork. This document legally binds you to silence about everything you're about to experience. You speak about this to anyone, your wife, your priest, your therapist, anyone, and you won't go to military prison. You'll simply disappear. Your family will be told you died in a training accident. There will be a funeral with an empty casket, and you'll spend the rest of your life in a facility that doesn't exist, with people who have no names, in a legal limbo that has no appeals process. Do you understand? I stared at the tablet. My hand was shaking as I reached for it. This was the moment. The last moment I could turn back, could say no, could walk away and go back to my normal life where the universe made sense and God was in his heaven and aliens were just stories for conspiracy theorists. But I didn't walk away. You want to know why? Because I'm a medic. It's what I am down to my bones. Something was dying, and I was trained to help. It's that simple and that complicated. I pressed my thumb to the biometric scanner, signed my name with the digital pen. The document disappeared from the screen, replaced by a single word in red, binding. Okay, I said, my voice barely audible. Show me. Bradley's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Relief, maybe, or pity. Follow me, Sergeant. And remember, whatever your faith has taught you about creation, about humanity's place in the universe, about God's plan, you're about to see something that will make you question all of it. Last chance to turn back. But we both knew I wasn't turning back. I followed him toward a reinforced door built into the ground, watched as he placed his hand on a scanner and spoke a code phrase into a microphone. The door hissed open, revealing an elevator shaft that dropped down into darkness so complete it looked like it went on forever. And as we stepped inside and the door sealed behind us with a sound like a tomb closing, I felt that cross against my chest. Still there, still real. I held onto it as the elevator started its descent, dropping us down into the earth, down into a place where God's light had never reached, down to where something that shouldn't exist was dying, down to where everything I believed was about to be torn apart. The elevator dropped for what felt like forever. No music, no pleasant ding at each floor, just the mechanical whir of cables and the feeling of your stomach trying to catch up with the rest of your body. There was a digital display showing our depth in feet, 50, 100, 150, 200. It kept going. Bradley stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind his back, staring straight ahead like he was made of stone. The tactical guys flanking us didn't even blink. But me? I was trying to control my breathing, trying to keep my hands from shaking, trying not to think about the fact that we were dropping deeper underground, than most people ever go in their entire lives. 250 feet, 300 feet. At 320 feet, the elevator finally slowed and stopped with a gentle bump that I felt in my knees. The doors opened onto a corridor that looked like something from a science fiction movie, all white walls and LED strips and air that smelled recycled and cold. The hum I'd heard on the surface was louder down here, resonating through the floor, through the walls, through my bones. It wasn't just sound anymore, it was presence. "Welcome to Sublevel 3, Bradley said as we stepped out. The corridor stretched in both directions, doors every 20 feet or so, each one marked with alphanumeric codes that meant nothing to me. People in white lab coats rushed past us, some carrying tablets, some pushing equipment on carts. Not one of them made eye contact. It was like we were invisible, or like they'd trained themselves not to see certain things. "This facility has 7 sublevels," Bradley continued as we walked. "Most of them are dedicated to research, analysis, storage. Sublevel 3 is medical. This is where we bring anything biological that comes through those doors. And trust me, Sergeant, we've had a lot come through those doors over the years." He said it so casually, like he was talking about processing paperwork instead of implying that this wasn't the first time they'd had something non-human down here. I wanted to ask about that, wanted to know what else they'd found, but my training kicked in. Focus on the mission. Focus on what's in front of you. Questions can wait. We turned a corner and entered what looked like a military briefing room, except everything was too clean, too advanced. A large screen dominated one wall, currently showing what I assumed was a satellite feed of the desert at night. There was a conference table surrounded by chairs, and sitting in those chairs were 5 people who all turned to look at me as we entered. 3 men in military uniforms with insignia I didn't recognize. 1 woman in civilian clothes with gray hair pulled back tight, and another man in a white lab coat with thick glasses and the kind of face that suggested he hadn't seen sunlight in months. "Everyone, this is Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison, Air Force Combat Medic," Bradley announced. "He's our primary medical response for the situation. Morrison, these are the people you'll be coordinating with. General Whitmore, NORAD, Dr. Patricia Chen, Xenobiological Specialist, Dr. Richard Vasquez, Trauma Surgeon from Walter Reed, Commander Hayes and Commander Morrison, no relation, both from an agency that doesn't have a public name." He pointed to each one as he spoke. None of them smiled. None of them offered to shake my hand. They just stared at me with expressions that ranged from exhaustion to something that looked like pity. "Sit down, Sergeant," General Whitmore said. He was older than Bradley, had to be pushing 70, with a voice like gravel in a cement mixer. I sat. The chair was comfortable in that corporate way that somehow makes you more uncomfortable. What I'm about to show you is footage from our recovery team. It was taken approximately 4 hours ago at the crash site. Before we go any further, I need to stress something. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. What you're about to see is real. This is not a drill. This is not a psychological experiment. This is not some elaborate test of your mental fortitude. This is happening right now, approximately 200 feet below where we're sitting. And we need you to accept that reality as quickly as possible, because we don't have time for the normal human reaction to this kind of thing. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Whitmore picked up a remote and pointed it at the screen. "Show him." The satellite feed disappeared, replaced by helmet cam footage from someone moving through darkness. Night vision, everything in shades of green and black. The person wearing the camera was running, boots crunching on rocky ground, breathing hard into the microphone. Other figures moved around them, at least a dozen, all armed, all moving with tactical precision towards something ahead. And then they stopped. The camera panned up, and I saw it. The crash site. Even through night vision, even with my brain trying to rationalize what I was seeing, there was no mistaking it. A craft, and I use that word because I don't have a better one, half buried in the desert floor. It was maybe 30 feet long, curved and organic looking, like it had been grown instead of built. The surface reflected the lights from the tactical team in ways that didn't make sense, sometimes absorbing the light, sometimes throwing it back in colors that shouldn't exist. Parts of it were clearly damaged, torn open, exposing interior structures that looked like a combination of metal and something almost biological. Smoke or steam rose from the wreckage, but it moved wrong, flowing upward in spirals that defied normal physics. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. Nobody corrected me for taking the Lord's name in vain. The camera moved closer. The team was setting up a perimeter, weapons trained on the opening in the craft's hull. Someone was calling out commands, but I couldn't focus on the words because I was staring at that opening, at the darkness inside it, at the way the edges of the torn metal seemed to shimmer and shift, even though nothing was moving. And then something emerged. The camera zoomed in and my heart stopped. It was a hand, but not a human hand. Too long, too thin, 4 fingers instead of 5, skin that looked gray in the night vision. The hand grasped the edge of the opening, and then a figure pulled itself out. The camera shook. The operator clearly wasn't prepared for this. None of them were, but it held steady enough for me to see. It was roughly humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head on a neck. But that's where the similarities ended. It was maybe 6 feet tall, but seemed taller because of how thin it was, like something had taken a human form and stretched it. The head was larger in proportion to the body, slightly elongated, with features that were both familiar and completely alien. The eyes, the eyes were huge, dark, reflective. Even through the green haze of night vision, I could see depth in those eyes. Intelligence, awareness, fear. The creature took 2 steps away from the wreckage and then collapsed. The tactical team swarmed forward, weapons still raised, and I could hear someone shouting, "Secure it! Get medical over here now!" The camera got closer, and I could see more details. The being was injured, badly. Its left arm hung at an unnatural angle, clearly broken. There was a wound in its side, something dark leaking out. Blood? I didn't know. Its chest was moving rapidly, breathing, struggling. It was alive. It was suffering. And as the team surrounded it, as they were preparing to transport it, the creature's head turned slightly and looked directly at the camera, directly at me, even though this footage was hours old, even though I was watching from a screen in a bunker hundreds of feet underground. Those black eyes locked onto the camera lens, and I swear I felt something, a presence in my mind, like someone had opened a door in my head that I didn't know existed, and then the screen went dark. The briefing room was silent, except for the hum in the walls and my own ragged breathing. "That was taken at 0327 hours, Dr. Chen said. She had a slight accent, Chinese maybe. Her voice was clinical, detached, like she was describing a lab rat instead of whatever that thing was. The entity was transported here via unmarked helicopter and brought directly to Sublevel 5 for initial containment and assessment. At 0445 hours, it was determined that the entity was suffering from multiple traumatic injuries, consistent with high-velocity impact, fractures, internal hemorrhaging, possible organ damage. At 0520 hours, the entity was upgraded to Sublevel 3 for emergency medical intervention. That's where you come in, Sergeant Morrison. She pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table to me. These are the preliminary scans we've managed to take. CT, MRI, thermal imaging. Look at them. My hands were shaking as I picked up the tablet. The first image was a skeletal scan. The bones were there, spine, ribs, skull, but the structure was all wrong. The proportions, the density, the way the joints connected. Human anatomy, but through a warped mirror. The second image showed what had to be internal organs, but I couldn't identify half of them. Things in places where things shouldn't be. Structures that served purposes I couldn't begin to guess. "It's dying," Dr. Vasquez said. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. "We've managed to stabilize it somewhat, but we're working blind here. We don't know its biology. We don't know what medications might help or kill it. We don't know what it needs to survive. All we know is that it's fading fast, and before it dies, we need information. We need to communicate with it. We need to know why it's here, where it came from, if there are more coming. And according to our psychologists, having a consistent medical caretaker, someone it can begin to trust, might be our best chance at getting through to it." He looked at me with something like desperation. "You're that person, Sergeant. You're going to keep this thing alive long enough for us to get answers. No pressure." I stared at the images on the tablet, my medical training trying to make sense of anatomy that didn't make sense. I'm not a xenobiologist. I'm not a specialist in anything like this. I'm a combat medic. I patch up soldiers. I don't even know where to start with something like this. General Whitmore stood up, placed both hands flat on the table, and looked me dead in the eyes. "You start by remembering your oath, Sergeant. You swore to preserve life, to do no harm, to help those who are suffering. This being is suffering. It's in pain. It's dying. And yes, it's not human. Yes, Everything you've ever believed about life in the universe is now completely inadequate. Yes, this is terrifying and impossible and goes against everything you were taught in church or school or anywhere else. But right now, in this moment, there is a living, thinking being 2 levels below us that needs medical care. Can you provide that care? Can you put aside your fear, your confusion, your existential crisis, and just do your job? The weight of his words hit me like a physical force. He was right. Strip away all the impossible, all the alien, all the reality-shattering implications. And what was left was simple. Something was hurt, and I could help. That's what medics do. That's who we are. I set the tablet down and looked up at the faces around the table. I'll need full access to medical supplies, real-time monitoring equipment, and complete authority to make medical decisions without waiting for committee approval. If this thing is dying as fast as you say, I can't waste time filling out requisition forms. A ghost of a smile crossed Bradley's face. Already arranged. You'll have everything you need. I stood up, legs feeling steadier than they had a few minutes ago. Purpose. That's what I was feeling. Purpose cuts through fear better than anything else. Then take me to it. Take me to the patient. Let's see if I can keep God's little mystery alive long enough to tell us why the hell it's here. They led me out of the briefing room and back into the corridor, but this time we went deeper. There was another elevator, smaller than the first, with a keypad that required 2 people to enter separate codes simultaneously. Bradley punched in his sequence while one of the tactical guys entered another, and the doors slid open with a hiss that sounded almost organic. Inside, the elevator walls were transparent, reinforced glass or something stronger, and as we descended I could see into the levels we passed. Sub-level 4 was full of equipment I couldn't identify, machines with lights that pulsed in patterns that hurt to look at. Sub-level 5 had rows of containment units, like massive aquarium tanks, most of them dark, but a few glowing with bioluminescent something. I didn't want to know what was in those tanks. Didn't want to think about how many other impossible things were stored in this place. We kept dropping. The elevator display showed S4, S5, S6, S7. When we stopped at sub-level 7, the deepest level, the air itself felt different, heavier, colder, like we'd descended into a place where the laws of the surface world didn't quite apply anymore. The doors opened onto a corridor that was different from the others. The walls here weren't white. They were a dark, gray metal, riveted and reinforced, like the inside of a battleship. The lighting was dimmer, more red than white, giving everything a hellish tint, and that hum, that presence I'd been feeling since I arrived, was overwhelming down here. It vibrated in my teeth, in my skull, made my vision blur slightly at the edges. Sub-level 7, Bradley said quietly as we walked. This is where we keep anything that's actively dangerous or unstable. Containment protocols down here are extreme. You'll notice there are no windows, no observation rooms. Everything is monitored remotely. If something goes wrong, this entire level can be sealed and flooded with halon gas in under 30 seconds. Everyone inside dies, but the contamination stays contained. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was explaining safety procedures for a factory tour. We're taking you to Medical Bay 7A. That's where the entity is being kept. Before we go in, you need to understand the protocols. We stopped at a heavy door, marked with biohazard symbols and warning signs in multiple languages. Next to the door was a changing room with a glass partition. Inside, I could see hazmat suits hanging on hooks, medical equipment on steel tables. You'll be suiting up in a Level A hazmat suit, Dr. Chen said, appearing from somewhere behind us. I hadn't even heard her follow. Not because we believe the entity is infectious. Preliminary tests show no viral or bacterial contamination, but because we don't know what other dangers might exist. Its biochemistry is completely unknown. It could exhale toxic compounds. Its bodily fluids could be corrosive. We simply don't know. She opened the door to the changing room and gestured me inside. The suit has its own oxygen supply, good for 6 hours. There's a communication system built into the helmet. We'll be monitoring everything from outside. Vital signs, air quality, radiation levels. If we detect anything dangerous, we'll pull you out immediately, whether you want to come or not. I nodded and stepped into the changing room. Through the glass, I could see them watching me as I stripped down to my underwear and began the process of putting on the hazmat suit. It took 15 minutes to get fully suited up. The suit was heavy, restrictive, made of some kind of advanced material that felt like rubber, but was apparently strong enough to withstand chemical burns and punctures. There were multiple layers: an inner cooling vest, the main suit, An outer protective layer, boots that sealed magnetically to the leg ports, gloves that locked at the wrists. The helmet was the worst part. It sealed around my neck with an inflatable collar that made me feel like I was being strangled. And when they activated the oxygen system, the sound of my own breathing filled my ears, loud and rhythmic, in, out, like Darth Vader, except this wasn't a movie. This was my life now. Dr. Chen's voice crackled through the helmet speakers. "Can you hear me, Sergeant?" I gave a thumbs up. "Good. Remember, do not remove any part of the suit while you're inside. Do not touch the entity directly. Use the medical instruments. And if you start to feel dizzy, nauseous, or experience any unusual sensations, report immediately. Understood?" Another thumbs up. I was trying not to think about what unusual sensations might mean in a place like this. The door to Medical Bay 7A required another biometric scan, another code, and then it opened slowly, revealing an airlock. I stepped inside, and the first door sealed behind me with a sound like a tomb closing. Red lights pulsed along the walls as the airlock cycled, equalizing pressure, running contamination scans. 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes. And then the inner door opened, and I saw it. The bay was larger than I expected, maybe 40 feet square, with walls covered in monitoring equipment and medical displays, showing data I couldn't interpret. In the center of the room was a containment bed, essentially a hospital bed surrounded by a clear enclosure with ports for medical instruments and a ventilation system. And on that bed, restrained with what looked like magnetic clamps rather than straps, was the entity. Seeing it on a video screen was one thing. Seeing it in person, even through the layers of my helmet and the containment barrier, was something else entirely. My legs nearly gave out. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to run, to get out, to get as far away as possible from this thing that shouldn't exist. But I'm a medic. So I walked closer. Each step felt like moving through deep water, but I kept going until I was standing right next to the containment bed, looking down at what lay inside. The entity was roughly humanoid, like I'd seen in the video, but the details were clearer now, more terrible. Its skin wasn't gray. It was something between gray and pale blue, with a texture that looked almost translucent in places, like I could see shapes moving beneath the surface. The head was elongated, hairless, with features that were simplified compared to human faces. No visible nose, just small slits. No ears that I could see. The mouth was a thin line, barely noticeable. And the eyes, God, the eyes. They were enormous, taking up maybe a third of its face, completely black except for what might have been pupils that looked like vertical slits, like a cat's eyes. They were closed right now, and I was grateful for that because I wasn't sure I was ready to have those eyes looking at me. The entity's chest was rising and falling rapidly, too rapidly. Respiratory distress. Even with anatomy I didn't understand, I could recognize suffering when I saw it. The medical monitors around the bed were showing vital signs, but the readings made no sense. Heart rate, if it had a heart, was at 187 BPM. Blood pressure equivalent was listed as 140/95. Body temperature was 94.3 degrees Fahrenheit. Hypothermic by human standards, but maybe normal for this species. Oxygen saturation was at 78% and dropping. It was dying, just like they'd said. I could see the injuries now. The left arm was definitely fractured, bent at an angle that made me wince even through all my years of trauma medicine. There was a large wound in its side, partially covered by some kind of metallic bandage that was clearly of human origin. Our doctors had already been working on it. Dark fluid leaked around the edges of the bandage, dripping onto the bed surface. That fluid was the wrong color, more purple than red, with an iridescence that shifted in the light, and there were burns. Multiple burns across its torso and legs, some deep enough that I could see the underlying tissue, which didn't look like muscle so much as bundles of fiber optics, organic technology that blurred the line between biology and engineering. "Sergeant Morrison, do you copy?" Dr. Vasquez's voice in my helmet made me jump. "We're reading your vitals. Your heart rate is elevated. Do you need a moment?" I swallowed hard, tasted copper in my mouth. No, I'm okay. I'm just processing." I moved to the control panel on the side of the containment unit. There were ports where I could insert my gloved hands to work on the patient, mechanical arms that I could operate from outside. Basic medical tools were already inside: scalpels, sutures, monitoring devices. But looking at this being, at this impossible thing lying broken in front of me, I realized that none of my training had prepared me for this. I didn't know its anatomy, didn't know what would heal it or kill it, didn't know if it felt pain the way we do, if it had emotions, if it understood that I was trying to help. "Talk to me, people," I said, forcing myself into professional mode. "What have we learned about its biology? What can you tell me that might help?" Dr. Chen's voice. "Preliminary analysis suggests a cardiovascular system, though more complex than human. Multiple hearts or heart chambers. We're not sure. The respiratory system seems to process both oxygen and nitrogen, but at different ratios than we breathe. The skeletal structure is more flexible than ours, possibly cartilaginous in places. The most important thing, the fluid leaking from the wound appears to serve multiple functions: circulation, immune response, possibly even neural transmission. If it loses too much, it dies. We need to stop that bleeding." I looked at the wound again. In a human, I'd know exactly what to do. Assess for arterial damage, apply pressure, close the wound, start fluids. But this wasn't human. What if applying pressure collapsed some organ I couldn't see? What if the sutures I used caused a toxic reaction? What if everything I did to help actually made things worse? "Sergeant," Bradley's voice this time, firm and commanding, "I know what you're thinking. You're second-guessing yourself. Don't. You're the best shot this thing has at survival. Trust your training and adapt. That's what medics do." He was right. I took a deep breath, heard it loud in my helmet, and inserted my hands into the control ports. The mechanical arms inside the containment unit mirrored my movements with surprising precision. I reached for a sterile cloth and carefully, very carefully, lifted the edge of the metallic bandage covering the wound. The entity's body tensed immediately. The heart rate monitor jumped to 210 BPM, and then, slowly, those massive black eyes opened and looked directly at me. I froze, completely froze, because the moment those eyes met mine, I felt it again. That presence, that door opening in my mind. And this time, something came through. Not words, not exactly, but meaning, communication. The entity was conscious, it was aware, and it was absolutely terrified. I stared into those alien eyes, my hands still holding the medical instruments, my brain trying to process the impossible fact that I was looking at intelligence from beyond Earth, and I did the only thing I could think of. I spoke. "I'm here to help," I said, not even sure if it could hear me through the containment barrier, through the differences in our auditory systems. "I'm a doctor. I'm going to try to heal you. Please, please don't be afraid." The entity's eyes didn't blink. I don't think it had eyelids, but something shifted in that gaze. The heart rate dropped slightly. 195, 190, 185. Still elevated, still critical. But maybe, just maybe, it understood. Maybe it knew I wasn't there to hurt it. And that's when I began the most important medical procedure of my life, working on a patient that shouldn't exist, in a room 700 feet underground, while everything I'd ever believed about God and creation and humanity's place in the universe began to crack and crumble around me. But I didn't think about that then. I thought about stopping the bleeding. I thought about saving a life, because that's what medics do, even when the life isn't human. Working on the entity was like performing surgery in a dream where everything looks familiar but functions wrong. I started with the wound in its side, the one leaking that purple iridescent fluid. Using the mechanical arms was awkward at first. There was a slight delay between my movements and the instrument's response, but I adapted quickly. Combat medicine teaches you to work fast and improvise, and this was just an extreme version of that. I used sterile gauze to clean around the wound edges, working as gently as I could. The entity's body flinched with each touch, muscles contracting in ways that didn't match human physiology. The skin felt wrong even through the mechanical interface. Too smooth, almost slippery, with a temperature that registered as cool on my instruments. As I worked, I kept talking. Not because I thought it understood English, but because that's what you do with trauma patients. You talk to keep them calm, to let them know someone's there, that they're not alone in their suffering. "I'm just cleaning the wound," I said softly. "This might hurt a little, but I need to see how deep it goes. I need to understand what I'm dealing with here." The moment I probed deeper into the wound, everything changed. The entity's eyes locked onto mine, and suddenly, I wasn't just in my own head anymore. It's hard to explain what happened next. I've been trying to find the right words for months now, and there just aren't any. The closest I can come is this. Imagine someone turned on a television inside your mind. No warning, no permission. Just suddenly there are images and sensations that aren't yours flooding through your consciousness. I saw flashes of things I couldn't comprehend. Geometric shapes folding through dimensions that didn't exist. Colors that had no names. Sounds that you felt instead of heard. And underneath it all, emotions. Raw, powerful emotions that hit me like a tidal wave. Fear, pain, loneliness. Something else that might have been grief, or might have been something humans don't have a word for. Jesus, I gasped, nearly dropping the instruments. The monitoring equipment around me started beeping urgently. Dr. Vasquez's voice crackled through my helmet. Morrison, your neural activity just spiked dramatically. What's happening in there? I couldn't answer, couldn't form words, because along with the images and emotions, there was something else. Awareness. The entity wasn't just broadcasting randomly. It was looking at me, into me, seeing parts of myself I didn't even know existed. And then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The connection severed, and I was back in my own head, gasping inside my helmet, sweat running down my face. The entity's eyes were still fixed on me, but the intensity had diminished. Its heart rate on the monitor had jumped to 223 BPM. I'm okay, I managed to say, though my voice was shaking. I'm okay. It communicated. Not words, but it definitely communicated. There was a pause on the other end. Then Bradley's voice. Communicated how, Sergeant? How do you explain telepathy to people who've never experienced it? How do you describe having your mind touched by something utterly alien? It showed me things, images, feelings. I don't know if it meant to or if it was just leaking somehow, like its consciousness is bleeding out along with everything else. Another pause. Can you continue? Bradley asked. I looked down at the entity, at this being from somewhere beyond Earth, dying on a table in a bunker built by humans who feared what they didn't understand. And I thought about what I'd felt in that moment of connection. The loneliness. God, the loneliness. Whatever this thing was, wherever it came from, it was alone here. Completely, devastatingly alone. Yeah, I said. Yeah, I can continue. I went back to work on the wound, moving more carefully now, trying to prepare myself in case the connection happened again. The wound was deep, maybe 4 inches, cutting through layers of tissue that looked partially organic and partially mechanical. I'm not exaggerating when I say mechanical. There were structures in there that looked like circuitry, like fiber optic cables, like technology grown into flesh, or flesh grown into technology. The line between biology and engineering was non-existent. Blood vessels, if that's what they were, pulsed with that purple fluid. Some of them had been severed in whatever impact had caused this injury. I needed to stop the bleeding, but I didn't know how these vessels would respond to cauterization or clamping. In a human, I'd use hemostatic agents, apply direct pressure, maybe ligate the vessels if I could access them. But this wasn't human anatomy. Dr. Chen, I said, I need options here. The bleeding is from what looks like vascular structures, but I don't know what will happen if I try standard hemostatic procedures. Could cauterization cause a toxic reaction? Could pressure collapse something vital? Her response was immediate. We don't know, but based on the cellular samples we've taken, the tissue seems to respond to thermal stimulus similarly to human tissue. Controlled cauterization at low heat settings might work. It's a calculated risk. Calculated risk. That's what all of medicine is, really. But usually you have textbooks and case studies and established procedures to guide you. Here I had nothing but instinct and a prayer that biology, even alien biology, followed some universal rules. I adjusted the surgical laser to its lowest setting and aimed it at the largest severed vessel. Here goes nothing, I muttered, and activated the laser. The tissue responded immediately, contracting and sealing. The flow of purple fluid slowed, then stopped from that vessel. The entity's body tensed and that heart rate monitor spiked again, but this time I was ready for the mental connection. It came like a wave, but gentler this time, more controlled. I felt its pain, sharp, burning, different from human pain but unmistakably suffering. But I also felt something else, recognition maybe, or understanding. It knew I was trying to help. I worked for the next 40 minutes, sealing vessels, cleaning the wound, removing fragments of what might have been the entity's ship embedded in its tissue. Those fragments were impossible. Smooth metallic surfaces that seemed to shift slightly when I touched them, warm to the instruments even though they'd been lodged in cool tissue. I placed them in a collection container for the research team. trying not to think about what technology capable of interstellar travel must look like up close. By the time I finished with the torso wound, I was exhausted. The hazmat suit was hot, my own sweat soaking the inner layers, my hands cramping from the precise movements through the mechanical interface. But the bleeding had stopped. The wound was closed with a synthetic mesh bandage, since I didn't trust traditional sutures on alien tissue. The monitor showed the entity's heart rate decreasing, 203, 1 to 98, 1 to 95. Still dangerously high, but trending in the right direction. "Good work, Morrison," Dr. Vasquez said. "Vitals are stabilizing. But we've got another problem. Look at the oxygen saturation." I glanced at the monitor. 71%. It had dropped from 78% when I started. The entity was suffocating, slowly but surely. "The respiratory system," I said. "Something's wrong with how it's processing air. Dr. Chen, what's the atmospheric composition in the containment unit?" She read off numbers. 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, standard sea level pressure. I looked at the entity's chest, watching it labor with each breath. The breathing pattern was wrong. Too fast, too shallow, like it couldn't get enough air. "What if it needs a different mixture?" I said. "What if Earth's atmosphere isn't right for it? The crash would have compromised its ship's life support. Maybe it's been slowly asphyxiating since it got here." There was rapid discussion on the other end, voices overlapping. Then Bradley. "We can adjust the atmospheric composition in the containment unit, but we're guessing blind here. Too much oxygen could be toxic. Too little, and it dies faster." "What are you thinking, Sergeant?" I was thinking about exobiology classes I'd taken as electives in college, about theories of alien life, about the fact that we were assuming this thing breathed oxygen just because it had lungs or lung equivalents. "Try increasing the oxygen concentration gradually," I said. "Bring it up to 30% and monitor the response. If saturation improves, we know we're on the right track. If it gets worse, we dial it back immediately." They agreed. I watched as vents in the containment unit hissed softly, adjusting the air mixture. 30 seconds passed. 1 minute. The oxygen saturation reading flickered. 72%, then 74%, then 76%. The entity's breathing slowed, became deeper, more rhythmic. 79%, 81%, 84%. "It's working," I said, not bothering to hide the relief in my voice. "Whatever it is, it needs more oxygen than we do." The entity's eyes, which had been moving frantically behind those dark surfaces, began to calm. And then it did something that made my heart stop. It spoke, not out loud. Its mouth didn't move. But in my head, clear as day, I heard a voice. Not a voice exactly. More like the concept of a voice. The idea of communication wrapped in something that bypassed language entirely. And what it said was simple, direct, and completely devastating. "Thank you." 2 words. Or rather, the meaning of 2 words, transmitted directly into my consciousness. But in those 2 words, I felt layers of significance. Gratitude, yes, but also surprise. Surprise that I had helped, that I had shown care, that I had treated it as something worth saving. And beneath that, an ocean of sadness so profound, it made my own experiences with grief seem like shallow puddles. This being had lost something, everything, maybe, and now it was here, broken and dying, being tended to by a stranger from a primitive species that probably shouldn't even exist in its understanding of the universe. I realized I was crying inside my helmet, tears running down my face, making it hard to see the monitors. "You're welcome," I said out loud, not caring that the research team could hear me talking to a being that hadn't vocalized. "You're welcome. I'm going to keep you alive. I promise." The entity's eyes held mine for a long moment. Then, slowly, deliberately, it moved its uninjured right hand, those 2 long fingers, that skin like moonlight, and pressed it against the inside of the containment barrier, palm flat against the clear surface. It was a gesture, universal maybe, or maybe just coincidence, but it felt like reaching out, like connection. I lifted my suited hand and pressed it against the barrier from my side, matching its gesture. 2 hands separated by technology and biology and millions of years of evolution, touching through a wall we'd built to keep the unknown contained. And in that moment, with our hands pressed together through the barrier, the connection opened fully. Not painful this time, not overwhelming, just clear. And what I saw made me understand that everything I'd been taught about God, about creation, about why we exist, was a lie. The entity showed me the truth, And that truth was so terrible, so beautiful, so impossibly vast that my mind could barely hold it. But I'll tell you about that. I'll tell you everything it showed me, because somebody needs to know what's really out there. Somebody needs to understand what we really are, even if that knowledge destroys you the same way it destroyed me. But first, let me tell you about the next 72 hours, about how I became the only human being to successfully communicate with an extraterrestrial intelligence, about how I learned its name, its purpose, its reason for being here, and about how it told me, with absolute certainty, that everything humanity believes about itself is a carefully constructed lie. Are you still listening? I hope you are. Because what comes next is where everything changes, where the story stops being about aliens and starts being about God, or what we thought was God, or what turns out to be so much worse than we ever imagined. They pulled me out of the containment bay after 6 hours. Standard protocol, they said. Can't risk prolonged exposure until we know more about potential hazards. But I knew the real reason. They'd been monitoring everything. My vitals, my neural activity, the biometrics that showed I'd been crying inside that helmet. They were worried I was breaking down, that the psychological stress was too much. Maybe they were right to worry. I stumbled out of the decontamination chamber, stripped off the hazmat suit with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and stood under a chemical shower that burned my skin but couldn't wash away what I'd felt when that being touched my mind. Dr. Chen was waiting when I emerged, holding a tablet and wearing an expression I couldn't read. "We need to debrief," she said. "Everything you experienced in there, every detail, the telepathic contact especially." I followed her to a small room with a table, 2 chairs, and a recording device with a blinking red light. For the next 3 hours I talked, trying to put into words what can't be put into words, trying to explain how it feels when something alien opens a door in your consciousness and shows you that you're not alone in your own head anymore. I told them about the images, the geometric impossibilities, the emotions that felt both completely foreign and somehow universal. Dr. Chen took notes, asked clinical questions, treated me like a data point instead of a human being who'd just had his understanding of reality shattered. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "The entity's vital signs improved significantly during your care. More than we expected based solely on the medical interventions. We believe your presence, specifically, is having a positive effect on its survival chances. Whatever connection formed between you, it appears to be mutually beneficial. The entity seems to respond to you in ways it doesn't respond to our remote monitoring." She leaned forward. "We need you to go back in, Sergeant Morrison. We need you to establish consistent contact, build trust. And when the time is right, we need you to ask it questions. Why it came here, whether there are others, what its intentions are." I stared at the blinking red light of the recorder. "You want me to be an interrogator? We want you to be a bridge," she corrected, "between humanity and whatever that being represents. You're the only one who's successfully communicated with it. That makes you the most important person in this facility right now." They gave me 8 hours to sleep in a room that was more cell than quarters. White walls, no windows, a bed that felt like concrete. I lay there staring at the ceiling, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw those massive black eyes staring back at me. Felt that presence in my mind, gentle but insistent, showing me things I wasn't ready to understand. Around hour 4, I gave up on sleep entirely and did what any good Texas boy raised in a Baptist household would do. I prayed, got down on my knees on that cold floor, clasped my hands together, and asked God for guidance. Asked Him to help me understand what I was dealing with. Asked Him to give me the strength to face whatever truth this creature had to share. The cross around my neck felt heavier than it ever had, like it was pulling me down toward the floor. I held onto it tight and prayed until my knees ached and my voice went hoarse. But here's the thing. For the first time in my life when I prayed, I didn't feel anything back. No peace, no comfort, no sense of divine presence listening. Just emptiness. Just me talking to the ceiling in a room 700 feet underground. I should have recognized that feeling for what it was. A warning, but I didn't. I just got up, splashed water on my face, and prepared to go back down to that containment bay. The second session started 18 hours after the first. They suited me up again, ran me through decontamination protocols, and sent me back into that red-lit corridor. This time, I knew what to expect. This time I walked into Medical Bay 7A with purpose instead of fear. The entity was awake, those dark eyes tracking my movements from the moment I entered. Its vital signs had improved. Heart rate down to 165, oxygen saturation holding steady at 87%, the wound in its torso showing signs of healing that shouldn't have been possible in such a short time. Alien biology, accelerated cellular regeneration, or maybe just tougher than humans in ways we couldn't measure. I approached the containment unit slowly, deliberately, trying to project calm, even though my own heart was hammering. "Hey," I said softly, "I'm back. How are you feeling?" The question was absurd. I had no idea if it understood the concept of "how are you feeling?" or if its species even had small talk, but it felt important to maintain some sense of normalcy, some routine. The entity's eyes locked onto mine, and I braced for the mental connection. It came immediately, but softer than before, more controlled, like it had learned to modulate the signal, to not overwhelm me with the full force of its consciousness. What I received wasn't images this time. It was sensation, physical sensation translated into thought, pain, but diminished, fatigue, hunger, or something like it. And underneath, that same profound loneliness, but also something new, curiosity. It was curious about me, about what I was. "I'm going to check your injuries," I said, moving to the control panel. "The wound in your side, your arm. I need to make sure everything is healing properly." I inserted my hands into the mechanical interface and began examining the entity's body. The torso wound looked remarkably better. The edges were knitting together with that too-fast healing. The purple fluid had mostly stopped leaking. I changed the bandage, cleaned the area, and moved to the fractured arm. Setting an alien bone was a surreal experience. The fracture was clean at least, and using portable imaging I could see how the bone structure aligned. I fashioned a splint using materials from the medical supplies, wrapping it carefully around that too-thin limb. The entity watched my every movement with those unblinking eyes. And then, as I was securing the splint, it spoke again. Not words in my language, concepts directly into my mind. "Your species, young. You do not know. You cannot know. But you try to heal anyway. Why?" The question caught me off guard. I paused, hands still on the splint, trying to formulate an answer that would translate across the vast gulf between us. "Because you're hurt," I finally said. "Because leaving something to suffer when you can help is wrong. That's what I was taught. That's what I believe." The entity was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, "Belief, yes. Your species has many beliefs. About origins, about purpose, about the ones who came before." A chill ran down my spine. "The ones who came before?" I asked. "You mean God? Are you talking about God?" The concept that came back was complex, layered with what felt like amusement and sadness mixed together. "God. Yes, you call it God. But God is not what you think. God is not who you think. God is a word you use for something you were never meant to understand. But you will understand. Soon, I will show you, healer. I will show you everything. And when I do, your beliefs will break like glass. Is this what you want? To know? To truly know?" I should have said no. Should have backed away, called for the research team. Let someone else handle this. But I didn't. Because the truth is, I've always wanted to know. Even when I was a kid sitting in my father's church, listening to sermons about divine mystery and having faith in what we cannot see, part of me always wanted proof, wanted answers, wanted to pull back the curtain and see what was really there. "Yes," I said, "I want to know." The entity's eyes seemed to grow darker somehow, like they were pulling light into themselves. "Then we will begin, but not yet. First I must heal more. First you must prepare, because what I will show you cannot be unseen. What I will teach you cannot be unlearned. You will carry this knowledge until your species ends, and it will be a burden heavier than your beliefs ever were." A pause. "My name, in your closest approximation, Kailtos. It means one who observes. That is what I am, an observer. I have watched your species for..." The concept that followed wasn't a number, but more like a feeling of vast time, of ages stacked upon ages. "Longer than your civilization has existed. I have watched and recorded and reported to those who sent me, and now I am here, broken, dying perhaps in the hands of those I observed. The irony is not lost to me, Kailthos. I had a name now. This wasn't just an alien, wasn't just a creature, wasn't just a specimen. This was Kailthos, an individual, a person, if that word even applied. An observer sent by someone or something to watch humanity. The implications were staggering. "Why did you crash?" I asked. What happened to your ship? The response came with images. A malfunction, systems failing, something wrong with the propulsion or navigation or whatever. Let that craft defy our physics. Then conflict, a decision. Come down now, risk crash, or stay up, certain death. Kael'thas chose the crash, chose a chance at survival even if it meant contact, even if it meant breaking whatever protocols its kind had for observing without interfering. You weren't supposed to make contact, I said slowly, understanding. You've been watching us all this time, but we weren't supposed to know you existed. And now everything changes, Kael'thas confirmed. For me, for you, for your species. The observation period is over. What comes next was not planned, was not authorized, but it is inevitable now. You will learn what you are, where you came from, why you exist, and that knowledge will spread, despite their efforts to contain it. The entity's gaze intensified. You will tell others. You are already planning to tell others. I can feel it in your thoughts. Good. This is good. The truth should not be buried, should not be hidden, even if it destroys you, especially if it destroys you, because the lie has gone on too long. I spent 6 more hours with Kael'thas that session. We didn't talk much more. Mostly I focused on medical care, monitoring vital signs, ensuring the healing continued. But there was a comfort now, a rapport. This being had a name, had a purpose, had a personality that was starting to emerge through our strange telepathic communication. I started thinking of Kael'thas as he, even though I had no idea if his species had gender. Intelligent, curious, and carrying a sadness so deep, it felt like gravity. Before they pulled me out, I asked one more question. Kael'thas, when you show me what you need to show me, when you tell me about God and creation and all of it, will I still be able to believe? Will I still be able to have faith in something? The response was immediate and devastating. No. Faith requires uncertainty. What I will give you is certainty, and certainty is the death of faith. But you asked for truth, healer. You asked to know, so you will know, and you will carry that knowledge like a wound that never heals. This is my gift to you, and my curse, and I am sorry for both. I left the containment bay with those words echoing in my mind, walked through decontamination like a ghost, barely feeling the chemical burn of the showers. They tried to debrief me again, but I told them I needed time to process, needed to sleep. They let me go, probably because my neural readings showed I was on the edge of a breakdown, but I didn't sleep. I sat on that concrete bed, holding the cross around my neck, and for the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be truly afraid, not of death, not of pain, but of knowledge, of learning something that would change me so fundamentally that the person I was would cease to exist. And in 72 hours, that's exactly what happened. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Next time, I'll tell you about day 3, about when Kael'thas's condition stabilized enough for him to start showing me what he'd promised, about when he opened my mind fully and let me see the universe as it really is, about when he showed me the truth about human origins, and about when I realized that my father's church, every temple, every sacred text in human history, was built on a foundation of beautiful, necessary lies. Keep listening, keep sharing this, because time is running out for me. They're getting closer, and I need someone to know what I learned before they silence me forever. Day 3 started the same way as the others. Hazmat suit, decontamination, the long walk down that red-lit corridor. But something was different this time. I could feel it in my bones, that electricity in the air before a lightning strike. Kael'thas was stronger now. The monitors showed it. Heart rate stabilized at 142, oxygen saturation at 91%. The wounds healing at a rate that had Dr. Chen and her team working overtime trying to understand the cellular mechanisms. But it wasn't just physical strength I felt. It was mental. The presence that emanated from that containment unit was more focused now, more deliberate, like a radio signal that had been fuzzy, suddenly coming in crystal clear. When I entered Medical Bay 7A, Kael'thas was sitting upright on the containment bed. I'd never seen him vertical before, and the sight stopped me in my tracks. He was taller than I'd realized, maybe 6.5 feet even sitting down, with a posture that was almost regal despite the injuries. Those massive eyes tracked me as I approached, and before I even reached the control panel, his voice filled my mind with an intensity that made my knees weak. Today you learn. Today I show you what your species has forgotten, what you were never meant to remember. Are you ready, Healer Jake Morrison? Hearing my name in that telepathic voice was jarring. I'd never told him my full name, but of course he knew. He'd been in my head, seen my memories, probably understood more about me than I understood about myself. I don't know if I'm ready, I admitted, but I don't think waiting is going to make it any easier. A feeling came through the connection that might have been approval, or satisfaction, or just acknowledgement. Truth, Kael'thas said. Waiting does not prepare. Nothing prepares. But you are stronger than most of your kind. Your mind has flexibility. You have seen death, trauma, horror in your wars. You think you know what darkness looks like. This will teach you otherwise. He gestured with his uninjured hand toward the space between us. Come closer. Press your hand to the barrier again. Physical contact strengthens the connection, makes the transfer cleaner. What I am about to show you exists beyond language, beyond simple thought. You will not just see it, you will experience it, you will live it.
And when it is done, you will understand why your churches exist, why your species clings to the idea of a loving creator, because the alternative is unbearable. I moved to the containment barrier, my hand trembling as I raised it to the clear surface. Kael'thas mirrored the gesture, pressing his 2 long fingers against the barrier from his side. The moment our hands aligned, separated only by that thin technological membrane, the world disappeared. I don't mean metaphorically.
I mean my awareness of the room, my body, the weight of the hazmat suit, all of it vanished like smoke. Suddenly, I was nowhere, and everywhere. I was floating in a void so absolute that calling it darkness doesn't do it justice. Darkness is the absence of light. This was the absence of existence itself. No up, no down, no sense of time or space, just nothing stretching infinitely in all directions. And then, slowly, pinpricks of light began to appear. Not stars, not yet. These were something more fundamental. Mathematical points of pure energy suspended in the nothing. And I understood, without being told, that I was witnessing the birth of the universe. Not the way we learned it in school, not the Big Bang as some cosmic explosion. This was different, intentional, calculated. The points of energy began to connect, forming patterns, networks, structures of impossible complexity. And at the center of it all, there was something, not God, not the bearded man in the clouds from Sunday school paintings, but something vast and alien and utterly indifferent. A consciousness that existed before existence, that thought reality into being not out of love but out of something closer to curiosity, or boredom, or hunger. I can't describe it properly because human emotion doesn't map onto what this thing felt. It was beyond us, so far beyond us that trying to understand its motivations was like an ant trying to understand nuclear physics. The vision shifted. Billions of years collapsed into moments. I watched galaxies form, stars ignite and die, planets coalesce from cosmic dust, and I saw something that shattered me. I saw other beings, not human, not even close. Civilizations rising and falling across millions of worlds. Species that evolved, developed technology, reached for the stars, and then disappeared. Not died, disappeared, erased, wiped from existence as casually as a child erasing chalk from a blackboard. And above it all, watching, recording, was that consciousness. That thing that might have created the universe or might have just been the first thing to wake up inside it. It was running experiments, testing variables, creating life, watching how it developed, and then deleting it when the experiment concluded. Over and over and over. Millions of species across billions of years, all of them thinking they were special, thinking they had meaning and purpose, never knowing they were just data points in a study they couldn't comprehend. You understand now, Kael'thas' voice echoed through the vision. You see what this is, what you are. Your species is not chosen, is not beloved, is not created in anyone's image. You are experiment number. The translation fails. A number beyond your counting. You are one attempt among millions to see what happens when certain variables combine in certain ways. The vision focused, zooming through space and time until I saw Earth. Young Earth, lifeless, covered in volcanic hellscapes and poisonous atmosphere. And then I saw them arrive. Ships, not like Kael'thas' craft, but massive structures that bent space around them, that existed partially in dimensions I couldn't perceive. And from those ships came the architects. Beings that made Kael'thas look primitive by comparison. Beings of pure energy and thought, capable of manipulating matter and biology at the atomic level. I watched them seed Earth with the building blocks of life, not randomly, deliberately. They designed the first organisms, encoded specific instructions into the DNA, set the parameters for how evolution would unfold. This wasn't natural selection as Darwin understood it. This was guided, controlled. Every major evolutionary leap, the development of complex cells, the Cambrian explosion, the rise of vertebrates, the extinction of the dinosaurs, all of it engineered, all of it part of the experiment. No, I heard myself saying, though I had no mouth in this vision, no body to speak with. No, that can't be right. Evolution is random, mutation and natural selection. You learned what you were allowed to discover, Kalthos interrupted. The mechanisms are real. Mutation happens. Selection occurs. But the parameters were set. The game board was designed. You were always going to end up roughly as you are. Bipedal, intelligent, curious, violent, capable of both great creation and great destruction. This is the pattern. This is what they wanted to study. The vision accelerated forward. I watched early hominids develop, watched Homo sapiens emerge in Africa, and I saw the interventions. Moments when the experiment seemed to stall, when humanity wasn't developing according to plan, and the architects would intervene. Sometimes subtly, a genetic mutation introduced here, a plague to cull certain populations there. Sometimes dramatically. I saw what really happened at places like Göbekli Tepe, Stonehenge, the pyramids. Humans built them, yes, but they built them following instructions they received in dreams, in visions, in voices they interpreted as gods speaking to them. The architects guiding their experiment, keeping humanity on track. The gods of your ancient civilizations, Kalthos explained. Zeus, Ra, Quetzalcoatl, all of them based on these moments of contact. When the architects needed to adjust the parameters, they appeared, not as themselves. Your ancestors' minds would have shattered, but as something comprehensible. Powerful beings in the sky, gods. And humans did what humans do. They worshipped, they built religions, they created meaning from the meaningless. The vision showed me more. I saw the architects leave Earth as humanity began to develop its own technologies, its own ability to observe and question. Saw them retreat to watch from a distance, through observers like Kalthos stationed across the cosmos. We are the next phase, Kalthos said. When a species reaches a certain level, direct intervention stops. Observation begins. We record. We report. We wait to see if you will pass the final test. What test? I managed to ask. What are we being tested for? The vision shifted one more time, and what I saw made every cell in my body want to scream. I saw Earth in the future. Not the far future, but soon. Maybe decades. Maybe less. I saw cities burning. Saw the sky turn colors it shouldn't be. Saw humanity tearing itself apart. Not from war or disease, but from something worse. From knowledge. From learning the truth. The same truth I was learning now. I saw people abandoning everything. Their jobs, their families, their will to live. Because once you know you're part of an experiment, once you understand that everything you believe is a construct designed to keep you functioning, the motivation to continue evaporates. Why have children if they're just more data points? Why create art? Why love? Why do anything if none of it has the meaning you thought it had? I saw suicide rates skyrocketing, saw governments collapsing, saw the social structures that hold civilization together crumbling like wet sand, and I saw the architects watching, waiting, recording. This was the test, the final test. Could a species survive learning the truth about itself? Could it find new meaning, new purpose, after the old ones were revealed as illusions? Or would it self-destruct? Another failed experiment to be erased and replaced with a new attempt. Most fail, Kalthos said quietly. Most species, when they learn what they are, choose to end. They cannot bear the weight of cosmic insignificance, cannot reconcile their sense of self-importance with the reality of being manufactured. Of the 47 species that have reached this stage during my observation period, 43 terminated themselves within a century of learning. 3 survived but regressed to pre-technological states, choosing comfortable ignorance over unbearable truth. One transcended, found new purpose beyond what the architects intended, became something unexpected, something that even the architects did not foresee. A flicker of hope ignited in my chest. Which one? What did they do? I cannot tell you, Kalthos replied. That information is restricted. Part of the test is finding your own path. but I tell you this, it is possible. Survival is possible. Meaning is possible, even if that meaning must be created rather than discovered. Even if you must build your own purpose in a universe that granted you none. The vision began to fade. I felt myself being pulled back toward my body, toward the containment bay, toward reality. Wait, I called out. You said you'd tell me about God, about creation, but what was that consciousness at the beginning? Was that God? Was that, Caiaphas said, has no name you could speak. It is not God as you conceive it. It does not love you, does not judge you, does not hear your prayers. It simply is. And you are simply one of many things it has made to see what would happen. Is that God? Your species will have to decide. I crashed back into my body with physical force, gasping inside my helmet, my legs giving out as I collapsed against the containment barrier. Alarms were sounding. Medical monitors were going haywire. I could hear Dr. Vasquez shouting through my helmet speakers. Morrison, Sergeant Morrison, respond. Your vitals just went through the roof. What happened? What's your status? I couldn't answer, couldn't form words. My mind was still trying to process what I'd seen, trying to fit billions of years of cosmic horror into a consciousness designed to worry about where the next meal comes from and whether the tribe over the hill was going to attack. I clutched the cross around my neck, that useless piece of silver that suddenly felt like a child's security blanket in a universe of monsters, and I realized I was crying, not quiet tears, full, body-shaking sobs that made my chest hurt and my throat burn. Because everything I'd believed in, everything I'd built my life around, every prayer I'd whispered in foxholes and operating rooms and churches, all of it was based on a lie. Not even a malicious lie, just a misunderstanding. A misinterpretation of contact with beings so far beyond us that we could only understand them as gods, and the real truth, that we were created not out of love, but out of curiosity, that we were experiments designed to generate data, that our suffering and joy and hope and fear were all just variables in a cosmic study, was so much worse than any hell my father had ever preached about. I'm sorry, Caiaphas's voice came through, gentle now, almost kind. I warned you. I told you faith would die, but you asked for truth, and truth is what I gave you. The first truth. There are more, so many more, about your prophets, about your holy books, about what really happened 2,000 years ago in Galilee. But you need time. You need to process. Return tomorrow, if you can, if you have the strength, because what I showed you today is only the beginning, and the rest is worse, so much worse. They dragged me out of the containment bay. I don't remember the decontamination, don't remember the walk back to my quarters. I remember lying on that concrete bed, staring at the ceiling, holding that cross so tight it left indentations in my palm. And I remember thinking, I can't tell them. I can't tell the research team what I saw, because if this information gets out, if humanity learns what we really are, we won't survive it. We'll tear ourselves apart. We'll end the experiment ourselves. But here's the thing, I'm telling you now. I'm telling everyone who listens to this recording, because maybe Caiaphas is right. Maybe the lie has gone on long enough. Maybe we deserve to know, even if it destroys us. Maybe destruction is better than living in ignorance. Or maybe I'm just broken. Maybe seeing what I saw broke something fundamental inside me, and now I want everyone else to hurt the way I hurt. I don't know anymore. I don't know anything anymore, except that tomorrow I go back down there. Tomorrow I learn what really happened with Jesus, with Moses, with all the prophets and miracles and divine interventions. Tomorrow Caiaphas tells me how they controlled humanity through religion, and I don't know if I'm strong enough to hear it, but I'm going to anyway, because I've already come this far, already seen too much to turn back, and because, God help me, I still need to know, even if knowing is killing me. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't even close my eyes without seeing that vast, indifferent consciousness. That thing at the center of creation that wasn't God but might as well have been, except it didn't love us, didn't even acknowledge us as anything more than variables in an equation. Around 4 a.m. I gave up trying and sat on the edge of my bed, turning that silver cross over and over in my hands. My father gave me this cross when I was 7 years old. "Wear this always," he'd said, his big hands gentle as they fastened the chain around my neck. "It'll remind you that Jesus died for your sins, that God loves you so much he sacrificed his only son to save you." I'd worn it every day for 27 years, through basic training, through deployments, through firefights where I pulled it out and kissed it before running into hell to save wounded soldiers. And now, sitting in this underground cell, it felt like a lie made of metal, a beautiful, comforting lie that I wasn't sure I could keep believing in. But I put it back on anyway, because even if it was a lie, it was my lie, the one I'd built my life around, and I wasn't ready to let it go. Not yet. Not until I heard everything casualties had to say. So when they came to get me at 600 hours, I went, suited up, walked that corridor, entered the containment bay where the being who was destroying my faith waited to finish the job. Casualties was standing this time, fully vertical, leaning slightly against the containment bed for support, but standing. His wounds had healed to the point where they looked weeks old instead of days. Alien physiology, or maybe the architects had designed their observers to be hard to kill. He turned those massive eyes toward me as I entered, and I felt the telepathic presence immediately, stronger than ever. "You came back," he said into my mind. "I was not certain you would. Many would flee after what I showed you. Choose comfortable ignorance over devastating knowledge. But you are here. This means you are ready for more, or you believe you are ready. The truth is, no one is ever ready for what I will show you today." I moved to the barrier, pressed my hand against it. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You said you'd tell me about the prophets, about Jesus, about how they controlled us through religion. I need to know. I need to understand how deep the lie goes." Casualties tilted his head in a gesture that was almost human. Almost. "Very well. But understand this, Jake Morrison. What I showed you yesterday was about the universe, about cosmic truth. What I show you today is personal. It will tear apart the foundation of your identity, the beliefs your father taught you, the faith that kept you alive in your wars. When this is done, that cross you wear will feel like chains. Are you certain?" I thought about saying no, thought about walking out, going home to Sarah and Emma, pretending I'd never been here, never seen any of this. But that was impossible now. The door had been opened. You can't unknow what you know. "Show me," I said. Casualties pressed his hand to the barrier, matching my gesture. The world fell away. This time the transition was smoother, like my consciousness was getting used to being ripped out of my body and flung across space and time. I found myself hovering above Earth, but Earth as it was thousands of years ago. I could tell by the lack of cities, by the different coastlines, by the way the planet looked pristine and untouched. 200,000 years ago, Casualties narrated, your species achieved behavioral modernity. You had language, tools, complex thought, but you were not developing as the architects intended. Too scattered, too tribal, too focused on survival to build the civilizations that would generate the data they wanted. So they intervened. They sent signals, dreams, visions, to specific individuals with certain genetic markers that made them more receptive to telepathic contact. The vision zoomed down, focusing on various points across the globe. I saw shamans in Africa, medicine men in Asia, spiritual leaders in Europe, all receiving the same messages in different forms. Instructions on agriculture, on social organization, on building permanent settlements, and woven through it all, the concept of divine authority. The idea that these instructions came from gods who must be obeyed. Every ancient civilization has stories of gods coming from the sky, Casualties continued. Sumerian tablets speak of the Anunnaki. Hindu texts describe the Vimanas. Native American legends tell of star people. All of them are corrupted memories of contact with the architects. When your ancestors were ready for the next phase, they appeared. Not often, not frequently enough to be commonplace, just enough to establish patterns, to create religions, to give humanity something to unite around, to fight for, to build monuments to. Religion was the architect's tool for accelerating social development. The vision shifted forward in time. I saw the rise of ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, saw the great temples being built, the priesthoods forming, the power structures that would define human civilization for millennia. And I saw the moments of direct intervention, a burning bush that actually burned with technology humans couldn't comprehend, a pillar of fire in the desert that was a guidance system for a migration the architects wanted to happen, plagues in Egypt that were targeted biological weapons released to force a political outcome. Moses, I whispered, the plagues, the parting of the Red Sea, that was all. Technology, Casualties confirmed. Advanced technology applied to primitive people who could only interpret it as divine miracle. The Red Sea did not part through prayer. It parted through precise manipulation of tidal forces and seismic activity, timed to allow the Hebrews through and close on the Egyptian army. The manna from heaven was nutrient paste dispensed from atmospheric drones. The tablets on Mount Sinai were data storage devices that Moses, in his limited understanding, carved into stone as commandments from God. Every miracle in your Torah, your Bible, your Quran, all of them explainable through technology. All of them interventions designed to push humanity toward specific social configurations. The vision accelerated through centuries. I saw prophets rising across different cultures, all receiving visions, all speaking with authority about divine will. And I saw the pattern. Whenever humanity seemed to be developing in ways the architects didn't want, too peaceful, too warlike, too stagnant, too chaotic, a prophet would emerge. They would preach, people would follow, society would shift, the experiment would continue. But then, something unexpected happened, Caiaphas said, and there was something different in his mental voice. Uncertainty, maybe, or fascination. 2,000 years ago, during the Roman occupation of Judea, the architects attempted something new. They wanted to test whether a message of universal love and self-sacrifice could stabilize your species' tendency toward violence. So they selected a candidate, a man with the right genetic markers, the right circumstances, the right personality, and they made him believe he was the Son of God. The vision focused on ancient Palestine, on a figure I recognized even though I'd only seen him in paintings and stained glass. Jesus of Nazareth, young, maybe early 20s, working as a carpenter in a small village. Ordinary, unremarkable. And then I saw it happen. Saw him in the desert, the 40 days and nights of fasting that the Bible talks about, and saw the architects contact him. Not Satan tempting him, as the story goes. The architects. They flooded his mind with visions, with knowledge, with the absolute certainty that he was divine. They enhanced certain parts of his brain, gave him abilities that seemed miraculous to observers, telepathy that he and others interpreted as reading hearts, healing abilities through bioelectric manipulation that looked like curing the blind and lame, charisma amplified beyond normal human levels. He believed it, I said, horror and awe mixing in my voice. He really believed he was the Son of God. It wasn't a con. He genuinely thought he was divine. Yes, Caiaphas confirmed, that was necessary. A liar would have been detected, but a man who truly believed, who spoke with absolute conviction, who performed miracles that seemed impossible, that man could change the world. And he did. Christianity spread across your planet, reshaping societies, influencing billions. It was one of the architect's most successful interventions. And the resurrection? I had to ask, even though I already knew the answer would destroy me. What about the resurrection? He died. He came back. Hundreds of people saw him. The vision showed me Golgotha, showed Jesus on the cross, dying as the stories say. But then I saw what happened after. Medical intervention, so advanced it looked like magic. His body taken to a cave, repaired at the cellular level, revived, not brought back from true death. He hadn't been dead long enough for brain death to occur, but healed from catastrophic trauma that should have been fatal. And then he appeared to his followers, just as the Bible describes. He lived another 37 years after the crucifixion, Caiaphas said quietly. Not in Palestine, where he would have been recognized and killed again. The architects moved him to what is now Kashmir, where he taught and lived quietly until his natural death. The tomb in India that claims to hold the body of Yuz Asaf, a prophet from the West, that is Jesus. But this truth is suppressed, must be suppressed, because if your Christians knew their Savior did not ascend to heaven, did not sit at the right hand of God, but lived and died as a man in exile, their faith would crumble. The vision showed me more. Muhammad receiving revelations in a cave, actual transmissions from orbit, that his mind interpreted as the angel Gabriel. The Buddha achieving enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, a consciousness expansion triggered by carefully targeted electromagnetic pulses. Joseph Smith finding golden plates, data storage devices that transmitted information directly into his brain, information he transcribed as the Book of Mormon. Every major religious figure in human history, every prophet and messiah and enlightened teacher, all of them touched by the architects, given visions, abilities, knowledge that elevated them above ordinary humans, not because they were chosen by God, but because they were chosen by the experiment. They were instruments, tools used to shape human development along the desired parameters. Religion is the architect's most elegant invention, Casualties explained. It gives your species purpose without giving you truth. It makes you believe suffering has meaning, that death is not the end, that some divine plan justifies all the pain. It keeps you functioning, reproducing, building, creating, generating the data the architects want. Without religion, your suicide rates would be catastrophic. Your birth rates would plummet. Your civilizations would collapse into nihilistic hedonism. Religion is the cage that keeps the experiment running. The vision pulled back, showing me Earth in the present day. I saw churches and mosques and temples scattered across every continent. Saw billions of people praying, believing, finding comfort in stories that were designed to comfort them, designed to control them. But here is the paradox, Casualties continued. The comfort is real. The love believers feel is real. The communities built around faith are real. The meaning people derive from religion is real, even if the foundation is false. Does it matter if the stories are manipulations, if they genuinely improve human lives, if they prevent you from destroying yourselves? This is the question my superiors debate. This is what makes your species interesting. I was pulled back into my body, gasping, tears streaming down my face inside the helmet. My hand was still pressed against the barrier, Casualties' hand matching it from the other side. My father, I choked out. My father was a pastor for 40 years. He devoted his entire life to spreading the gospel. He believed with everything he had, and it was all a manipulation, a control mechanism. Your father's faith was real, Casualties said gently. His love for his congregation was real. The good he did in the world was real. Only the origin of his beliefs was false. Does that diminish the value of his life? Yes, I shouted, not caring that the research team could hear me. Yes, it diminishes everything, because he thought he was serving God. He thought he was saving souls. He thought there was heaven waiting for him, for all of us. And there's nothing. There's just the architects, just indifferent cosmic scientists watching their lab rats and occasionally poking us to see what happens. I slammed my hand against the barrier, then again and again, rage and grief overwhelming every other emotion. It was all a lie. Every prayer, every sermon, every time he told someone that God loved them, that Jesus died for them, that faith would see them through. Lies. Beautiful, necessary lies, but lies nonetheless. I collapsed against the barrier, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor of the containment bay, my hand still touching the place where Casualties' hand remained pressed. I can't go back, I said quietly. I can't go home to my wife and daughter and pretend to be the man they think I am. That man believed in God. That man wore this cross with pride. That man is dead, and I don't know who I am without him. Casualties was silent for a long moment. Then, you are what you choose to be. This is the gift of knowing. You are not bound by the architect's design. You know the cage exists, which means you can choose to remain in it for comfort, or step outside and face the universe as it truly is. Neither choice is wrong. Both are terrifying. What do you choose? I asked. You know all this. You've known for however long you've been alive. How do you deal with it? Another pause, then something I didn't expect. Sadness. Deep, overwhelming sadness radiating through the telepathic connection. I do not deal with it, Jake Morrison. I carry it, like a weight that grows heavier with each passing cycle. My species evolved naturally, without architect interference. We developed, grew, reached the stars on our own. And then we discovered the truth, that we were the exception, that nearly every other intelligent species in the galaxy was created, managed, controlled, that the universe is not a natural garden, but a laboratory. Some of us chose to serve the architects as observers, thinking that understanding the experiment gave us purpose. But we were wrong. Knowledge without the ability to change what you know is its own form of torture. He moved his hand slightly, and I felt it like a caress against my palm through the barrier. You asked if you can still believe. The answer is, you can believe in whatever gives you the strength to continue. Believe in love. Believe in human potential. Believe in the value of consciousness itself, regardless of its origin. Or believe in nothing. But do not believe you are alone in your despair. Across the galaxy, billions of beings live with this knowledge. Some thrive despite it. Many do not. You will have to discover which one you are. They pulled me out of the containment bay shortly after that. I don't remember decontamination. Don't remember the walk back to my quarters. I remember sitting on my bed, unclasping the chain from around my neck, holding that silver cross in my hand, my father's gift, my talisman, my lie. I should have thrown it away, should have flushed it down the toilet or crushed it under my boot heel, but I didn't. I put it in my pocket instead, because even though I knew the truth now, even though I understood that Jesus was just a man touched by aliens, that God was just a word for beings who manipulated us, that every prayer I'd ever said went nowhere, part of me still needed that cross, still needed the comfort of the lie, and maybe that made me weak, or maybe it made me human. I don't know anymore. What I do know is that I had 3 more sessions with casualties after that, 3 more days of revelations that got progressively worse, and in the final session, he told me something that made everything else seem trivial by comparison. He told me why the experiment was ending, why he'd crashed, what was coming for Earth, and that's when I understood that knowing the truth wasn't the worst thing that could happen. The worst thing was knowing the truth and being powerless to stop what comes next. But I'll tell you about that tomorrow, about the final revelation, about what casualties showed me in those last moments before he died. Yes, died. I should mention that up front. Casualties didn't survive, and neither will most of humanity if what he told me comes true. Sweet dreams, everyone. If you can still sleep after hearing what you've heard, I know I can't. Haven't slept properly in months. Probably never will again. Day 5. I walked into that containment bay knowing something was wrong before I even saw casualties. The monitors outside were showing erratic readings, heart rate fluctuating wildly between 98 and 201, oxygen saturation dropping to 82%, despite our best efforts to optimize his atmosphere. Dr. Chen had pulled me aside before I suited up, her usual clinical detachment cracking just enough for me to see the concern underneath. His condition is deteriorating rapidly, she'd said. We don't know why. All his wounds have healed. By every measure we can take, he should be stable. But something is failing systemically. It's like his body has decided to shut down. I knew why. I knew even before I asked him. When a being has lived as long as casualties, has seen as much, has carried the weight of cosmic truth for millennia, sometimes the body just gives up. Sometimes existence itself becomes too heavy to carry. I'd seen it in soldiers who survived horrific injuries, only to die weeks later from no identifiable cause. The mind tells the body it's done, and the body listens. Casualties was dying because he decided to die, and I think part of him had been dying since the moment his ship crashed, since the moment he broke protocol and made contact, since he chose to tell me everything he'd been forbidden to share. When I entered the bay, casualties was lying down again, that regal posture from days before gone. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, as if gravity was pulling harder on him than the rest of us. Those massive eyes turned toward me, and the telepathic presence that had been so strong before was flickering, like a light bulb about to burn out. Jake Morrison, his voice came weakly into my mind. My healer, my friend, you came to witness the end. I moved to the barrier, pressed my hand against it. He lifted his hand, slowly, painfully, to match mine. You're giving up, I said, and I was surprised by the anger in my voice. I worked my ass off to keep you alive, and you're just giving up? A feeling came through the connection that might have been amusement or pity. Not giving up, completing. My purpose here is finished. I have told you what you needed to know. Now the information exists in a human mind, can be shared with your species, can spread beyond the ability of your governments to contain it. The observation period is over. My role is done. And I am very, very tired, Jake Morrison. I have been alive for 4,217 of your years. I have watched civilizations rise and fall. I have recorded data on 341 different species across the galaxy. I have never intervened, never broken protocol, until now, until you. Why? I asked. Why break protocol for us? For me? Casualties' eyes seemed to focus on something beyond the barrier, beyond me, beyond the room. Because I saw in your species something I have not seen in others. You are broken, flawed, violent and destructive and capable of terrible cruelty. But you are also capable of irrational compassion. You save those who cannot benefit you. You create beauty for no logical reason. You love knowing that everything you love will die. This should not work. By every rational measure, your species should have self-destructed millennia ago. But you persist. You cling to hope even when hope is illogical. You find meaning in a meaningless universe. And I realized, watching you all these centuries, that perhaps you are not the experiment. Perhaps we are. Perhaps the architects are studying us as much as they study you, to see if knowledge of the truth makes us superior to you, or simply more miserable. He paused, gathering strength. When I crashed, when I was injured and alone and certain I would die, I made a choice. If I was going to die anyway, I would do one thing that mattered, one thing that was mine, not theirs. I would tell you the truth, all of it, and I would see what you did with that truth, whether you would break or adapt, whether you would spread it or suppress it. This became my final experiment, my rebellion, and my gift to you. Some gift, I said bitterly. You destroyed my faith, destroyed my ability to find comfort in anything I believed. How is that a gift? Because now you are free, Kael'thas responded. Free from the cage. Free to find authentic meaning instead of manufactured meaning. Yes, you will suffer. Yes, the weight is heavy, but it is yours. Your suffering, your meaning, your choice. That is the gift. That is what the architects cannot give and cannot take away. I wanted to argue, wanted to rage at him, but his presence was fading so quickly I knew we didn't have much time. You said there was more, I pressed. You said the worst was still coming. What did you mean? What's coming for Earth? Kael'thas's eyes closed for a moment, and when they opened again, I felt a surge of urgency in the telepathic connection. Yes, the final truth, the one I have dreaded sharing most. Press closer, Jake Morrison. What I am about to show you will require all my remaining strength, and when I am done, I will have nothing left. Promise me you will share what you learn. Promise me my death will mean something. I promise, I said, my throat tight. I'll tell everyone. I'll make sure people know. I swear it. Kael'thas's hand pressed harder against the barrier, and I felt the world fall away one last time. The vision that opened before me was different from the others. Darker, more immediate. I saw Earth from space, but not as it is now. This was future Earth, maybe 10 years from now, maybe 20, and it was dying. The oceans were wrong colors, red in places, black in others. The atmosphere was thick with something that obscured the continents below, and around the planet, in orbit, were structures. Massive structures that made the International Space Station look like a child's toy. Architect technology, harvest platforms. The experiment is ending, Kael'thas narrated, his mental voice strained. Humanity has reached the critical juncture. You have developed nuclear weapons, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, all the technologies that determine whether a species transcends or destroys itself. The architects have gathered sufficient data. The test phase is complete. Now comes the evaluation. I watched in horror as beams of light descended from the orbital structures, touching down on cities across the planet. Not weapons, scanning beams, analyzing, cataloging. What are they doing? I asked, though I was terrified of the answer. Harvesting, Kael'thas said simply. Every species that completes the experiment is evaluated. Those individuals who show exceptional potential, genetic markers, psychological traits, creative capacity, they are harvested, taken, preserved for future study or integration into the architect's collective. The rest, the vision showed me the rest. The beams intensified, and where they touched, people simply vanished. Not killed, removed, deleted from existence as cleanly as erasing data from a hard drive. Cities became ghost towns in moments. Billions of people deleted in a cosmic cleaning operation. The architects are efficient, Kael'thas continued. They take what is useful and discard the remainder. Approximately 1 in every 1,000 humans will be deemed worth preserving. The other 999 will be deleted. Your planet will be reset, seeded with new life, and the experiment will begin again with different parameters. This is what happened to the 43 species that failed the test. This is what will happen to humanity. Soon. How soon? I managed to ask, though I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. The signs are already appearing, Kael'thas said. Increased UFO sightings, more frequent contact events, technology advancing at rates that seem miraculous, gifts from the architects to accelerate you toward the evaluation threshold. 5 years, 10 at most. The harvest platforms are already being positioned. Your governments know. Your military tracked my ship because they have been tracking architect movements for decades. They know the evaluation is coming. They know they cannot stop it. All they can do is prepare to save those deemed worthy and abandon the rest. The vision shifted, showing me bunkers deep underground, similar to the one I was in now. Massive facilities capable of housing thousands, filled with supplies, technology, genetic samples. Your Area 51 is one of several contingency sites, Kael'thas explained. When the harvest begins, your elite will retreat underground. Scientists, military leaders, political figures, genetic specimens selected for optimal diversity. They will wait out the harvesting, then emerge to rebuild with architect technology. Humanity will survive, but not as you know it. As a curated species, a pet project, a success story in the architect's catalog. I was crying again, hot tears of rage and helplessness. And there's nothing we can do. We just wait to be deleted. Wait for them to pick and choose who lives and dies. There is one option, Kael'thas said quietly. The option that one species chose before. The species I mentioned that transcended. They unified. When they learned the truth, instead of fragmenting into despair, they came together. Every nation, every faction, every individual focused on a single goal, proved to the architects that they had evolved beyond the experiment, that they deserved not to be harvested, but to be recognized as equals. They developed technologies the architects had not anticipated. They demonstrated capabilities that defied the experiment's parameters. They became unpredictable, valuable in ways the architects could not catalog, and the architects, fascinated by this unexpected outcome, granted them autonomy. They are one of the few species allowed to exist outside the experiment framework. How? I demanded. How did they do it? Kael'thas's presence was fading fast now, his mental voice barely a whisper. They did what your species has never managed to do for long. They stopped fighting each other. They shared all knowledge, all resources, all technology. They dissolved national boundaries and religious divisions. They focused every ounce of their collective intelligence on a single question. How do we become something the architects cannot harvest? And they found an answer. I cannot tell you what that answer was. It must be unique to your species, or it means nothing. But I can tell you this. If humanity continues on its current path, divided and suspicious and violent, you will be harvested. All but 1,000 of you will cease to exist. But if you unify, if you transcend your tribal nature, if you become something unexpected, there is a chance, a small chance, but a chance nonetheless. The vision was fading. I was being pulled back to my body. Wait, I called out. How do I convince people? How do I make them believe this? They'll think I'm crazy. They'll lock me up. You will find a way, Kael'thas said, his voice almost gone now. Or you will not. But at least the information will exist. At least someone will know. And knowledge, once released, cannot be contained. It spreads like water through cracks. Even if they silence you, the truth will find other voices. This is why I told you. This is why I broke protocol. Because your species deserves a chance to fight, even if that chance is infinitesimally small. I crashed back into my body, gasping, and immediately saw the monitors. Kael'thas's heart rate was plummeting. 87, 73, 55. No, I shouted, pressing my hands frantically against the barrier. Stay with me! Don't go! There's more I need to know. More you need to tell me. Kael'thas's eyes opened one last time, looking directly at me. And what came through the telepathic connection wasn't words or images. It was pure emotion, gratitude, affection, hope, things I didn't know an alien could feel for a human, things I didn't know I could feel for something so utterly not human. Thank you for healing me, his voice came, so faint I almost missed it. Thank you for seeing me as a being worth saving instead of a specimen to study. You are what makes your species worth the small chance I am giving them. You are why I chose to hope. Goodbye, Jake Morrison. Whatever comes next, I hope your species surprises me one more time. The heart rate monitor hit 0. The brainwave activity flatlined. Kael'thas's eyes stayed open, but the presence behind them was gone. The entity, no, the person, who had destroyed and rebuilt my understanding of reality was dead, and I was alone in that containment bay with a corpse from the stars and knowledge that would either save humanity or get me killed, probably both. They burst into the bay moments later. Medical teams, research personnel, Bradley shouting orders. They tried to revive Kael'thas, tried every technique human medicine had, but it was pointless. He was gone. He'd chosen to go, and he'd left me with a burden I didn't know how to carry. They pulled me out for debriefing. Hours of questions about what happened, what Kael'thas told me in those final moments. I lied, told them he'd just drifted off. No final revelations. No last words. Because I knew if I told the truth, if I mentioned harvest platforms and evaluation periods and humanity's looming extinction, they'd lock me in a room and throw away the key. I needed to get out, needed to get home, needed to figure out how to share what I knew without ending up disappeared in some black site. They held me for 3 more days, running medical tests, psychological evaluations, more debriefings. On day 8, they let me go. Gave me a cover story about a classified medical emergency I was not to discuss. Gave me papers to sign that threatened prosecution if I ever mentioned what happened. Gave me a look that said they'd be watching me for the rest of my life. I signed everything, agreed to everything. Walked out of that facility knowing I was going to break every agreement the moment I had a chance. I went home to Sarah and Emma. Held my daughter while she told me about school and her friends and her stuffed animals. Kissed my wife and pretended everything was fine, but I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't function like a normal human being because I kept seeing those harvest platforms, kept imagining 999 out of every 1,000 people I knew simply ceasing to exist, including probably Sarah, probably Emma, probably everyone I'd ever loved. So I started writing. This recording is the culmination of 3 months of writing, editing, finding ways to share what I know without immediately getting caught. I've sent copies to journalists, to conspiracy theorists, to anyone who might listen and might spread the word. Will it make a difference? I don't know. Will it convince humanity to unify and transcend our tribal nature in time to avoid the harvest? Probably not. But at least the information exists now. At least people can't say they weren't warned. And if the harvest comes, if those platforms appear in the sky and start deleting us by the billions, at least some of you will understand why. At least you'll know we had a chance, however small, and we blew it. Or maybe we won't blow it. Maybe someone smarter than me will figure out what that transcendent species did. Maybe humanity will surprise everyone, including the architects, including Kalthos's ghost, including me. Maybe we'll find a way to become something worth keeping, something unexpected, something that cannot be harvested. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm fighting for by sharing this story. But I'm running out of time. They're getting closer. I've seen the cars watching my house. My phone clicks in ways it shouldn't. Sarah keeps asking why I'm so paranoid, why I keep checking the locks, why I've started sleeping with the Glock under my pillow. I can't tell her. Can't tell her that her husband knows the truth about God and creation and the end of the world. Can't tell her that we're all lab rats waiting for the experiment to end. Can't tell her that I love her with everything I have, but that love might not matter when the harvest comes. So I'm recording this instead, sharing it with you, hoping someone out there will hear and understand and do something I couldn't figure out how to do. Because if this recording disappears tomorrow, if I disappear tomorrow, at least you'll know. At least someone will know the truth. That's worth something, right? That has to be worth something, even if it destroys us. The drive back to Las Vegas from Area 51 took 4 hours. They didn't blindfold me this time. I guess once you've seen what I'd seen, there was no point in secrecy about the route. They just put me in an unmarked SUV with 2 silent men in tactical gear and drove me to the edge of the city, dropped me at a gas station off the highway like I was yesterday's garbage. No goodbye, no thank you for your service. Just a look that said, "We're watching," and they drove away. I stood there in the parking lot, still wearing my uniform, with nothing but my wallet and my phone, which they'd returned after wiping it clean of everything, photos, messages, contacts, all of it gone. The sun was setting, painting the Nevada sky in colors that would have been beautiful if I could still feel beauty. But all I felt was hollow, emptied out, like someone had reached inside and scooped out everything that made me who I was, leaving just a shell walking around pretending to be Jake Morrison. I called Sarah from a payphone. Yeah, they still have those, because I didn't trust my phone not to be monitored. She answered on the second ring, her voice frantic. Jake, is that you? Where have you been? They said it was classified, that you couldn't contact me, but it's been 8 days and I've been losing my mind. I'm coming home, I said, and my voice sounded wrong even to myself. Flat, dead. I'm okay. I'll be there in an hour. You don't sound okay, Sarah said, that wife sense kicking in, that ability to read me even through a phone line. Jake, what happened? What did they do to you? Nothing, I lied. Just a long assignment. I'm tired. I'll explain when I get home. Except I wouldn't explain. Couldn't explain. How do you tell your wife that God isn't real, that aliens are real, that humanity is an experiment scheduled for termination, and that everyone she loves will probably be deleted from existence within a decade. You don't. You lie. You pretend. You protect her from a truth that would break her. I hung up and stood there for a long time, staring at the payphone, at my hand still gripping the receiver, at the cross that was in my pocket now instead of around my neck. I'd put it back on twice during those 3 days of debriefing, trying to reclaim some sense of normalcy, some connection to the man I used to be. But both times it felt like wearing a costume, like pretending to be someone who no longer existed. So I'd taken it off and shoved it deep in my pocket where I wouldn't have to look at it, where I wouldn't have to remember my father's hands fastening it around my 7-year-old neck, where I wouldn't have to think about all the prayers I'd whispered to a god who was really just advanced aliens manipulating primitives. I took an Uber home, paid cash because I was already paranoid about digital trails, and spent the ride staring out the window at Las Vegas sliding by. All those people walking around laughing, gambling, living their lives completely unaware that they were experiments, that their whole existence was data being collected by beings who viewed them as we might view bacteria in a petri dish. That couple holding hands? Experiment. That kid playing on his phone? Experiment. That homeless man on the corner? Experiment. All of them thinking they had free will, thinking their choices mattered, thinking they were the protagonists of their own stories. None of them knowing they were background characters in someone else's research paper. And I couldn't tell them, couldn't grab them by the shoulders and scream, "Wake up, you're not real, none of this is real," because they'd think I was crazy. Hell, I thought I might be crazy. Maybe I'd had a psychotic break at Area 51. Maybe casualties was a hallucination brought on by stress and trauma. Maybe I was in a psychiatric hospital right now, drugged out of my mind, and this was all a delusion. That would be better, wouldn't it? Better to be insane than to know what I knew. Better to be broken than to be the only sane man in a world of people walking toward extinction with smiles on their faces. Sarah was waiting on the porch when the Uber pulled up. She ran to me before I even got out of the car, threw her arms around me, buried her face in my chest. Oh God, Jake, I was so scared. They wouldn't tell me anything. Just that it was classified and you were safe, but I didn't know if I believed them. And she pulled back, looked at my face, and I saw her expression change, saw the recognition that something was fundamentally wrong. "Jake, baby, what's wrong? You look..." She touched my cheek and I flinched involuntarily. Not because I didn't want her touch, but because touch felt different now. Everything felt different, like there was a sheet of glass between me and the rest of reality. "I'm just tired," I said, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. "It was a rough week. I need sleep." Emma came running out then, my 6-year-old daughter in her Princess Elsa pajamas, yelling, "Daddy! Daddy's home!" She jumped into my arms and I caught her automatically, held her close, breathed in that kid smell of strawberry shampoo and apple juice, and I started crying. Right there on our front lawn, holding my daughter, I started sobbing like my heart was breaking, because it was breaking. Because I was holding this beautiful, innocent child who thought her daddy was a hero, who believed in God and Santa Claus and happily ever after. And I knew things she should never have to know. Knew that in 5 or 10 years, harvest platforms might descend from the sky and delete her from existence. Knew that every bedtime prayer she said was shouting into the void. Knew that the universe didn't care about her any more than it cared about an ant on the sidewalk. "Jake!" Sarah's voice was panicked now. "Jake, you're scaring me. What happened? Please, talk to me." But I couldn't talk, could barely breathe. I set Emma down gently, tried to smile at her through the tears. "Daddy's okay, princess. Just missed you so much." Emma looked worried. Kids know when adults are lying. But Sarah ushered her back inside, told her to go watch cartoons, that she needed to talk to Daddy alone for a minute. We sat on the porch steps, Sarah's hand on my knee, her eyes searching my face for answers I couldn't give. "They did something to you," she said quietly. "Whatever this assignment was, it broke something. I can see it. You're not you anymore." She was right. I wasn't me anymore. The old Jake Morrison was dead, killed by knowledge, replaced by this hollowed-out thing wearing his skin. "I can't talk about it," I said. "You know how classified work is. I signed things, made promises. If I talk, there are consequences." "Screw the consequences," Sarah said, her voice rising. "You're my husband. You're Emma's father. I don't care what you signed. I need to know what's wrong so I can help you." But she couldn't help. Nobody could help. This wasn't PTSD from combat. This wasn't depression or anxiety or any condition that therapy and medication could fix. This was existential devastation. This was having your soul ripped out and replaced with cosmic horror. I saw things, I said finally, choosing my words carefully. Things that changed how I see the world. Things I can't unsee. And I don't know how to go back to normal after that. Don't know if normal even exists anymore. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that broke me all over again. Can you still love us? Even with whatever you saw, can you still love me and Emma? The question hit me like a bullet. Could I still love them? Did love even matter in a universe where we were all just experiments waiting to be terminated? Did any emotion matter when consciousness itself was manufactured? When free will was an illusion? When everything I felt was just chemical reactions designed by the architects to keep me functioning? I don't know, I whispered, and the look of devastation on Sarah's face made me want to die. I don't know what I feel anymore. I don't know what's real. I put my head in my hands. I need time. I need to process. Can you give me some time? Sarah stood up, and I could see her fighting back tears. I don't understand what happened to you. I don't understand where my husband went. But yes, I'll give you time. I'll give you space. I'll do whatever you need. She paused at the door. But Jake, whatever you saw, whatever you experienced, it doesn't change the fact that we love you. Emma and I, we're still here. We're still real. And whatever darkness you're fighting, you don't have to fight it alone. When you're ready to talk, really talk, I'll be waiting. She went inside, and I sat there on the porch steps as the sun finished setting, as the Nevada sky turned from orange to purple to black. Sat there thinking about love and reality, and whether anything mattered. Sat there with Kalthos's words echoing in my mind. You can believe in whatever gives you the strength to continue. Maybe that was the answer. Maybe it didn't matter if love was real in some cosmic sense. Maybe what mattered was that it felt real, that Sarah's concern felt real, that Emma's hug felt real, that even in a manufactured existence, the experiences and emotions were still mine, still valid, still worth something. Or maybe I was just trying to rationalize my way out of despair, trying to find meaning in a universe that Kalthos had proven was meaningless, trying to light a candle in a darkness so absolute it swallowed stars. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been hours. Eventually, I went inside, moved through the house like a ghost, found Emma asleep in her bed with her stuffed rabbit. I stood in her doorway, watching her chest rise and fall, thinking about the harvest, thinking about those beams of light descending from orbit, analyzing, categorizing, deciding who lived and who got deleted. Would Emma be in the 1,000 out of every 1,000 that they kept? Was she exceptional enough, valuable enough in their calculations? Or would I have to watch my daughter cease to exist while I survived? One of the lucky, or unlucky, few deemed worth preserving. The thought made me physically ill. I ran to the bathroom, threw up everything in my stomach, dry heaved until my ribs ached. Sarah appeared in the doorway, worry written across her face, but I waved her away. Just need a minute, I gasped. Please. She left, and I sat on the bathroom floor, leaning against the toilet, my forehead pressed against the cool tile, and I prayed. Not to God. I couldn't do that anymore. Couldn't address my words to a being I knew didn't exist. But I prayed to something, the universe, fate, whatever force might be listening. If anyone's out there, I whispered. If there's anything beyond the architects, anything that actually cares, please. Please don't let this be the end. Don't let the harvest take my daughter. Take me instead. Take me 1,000 times over. Just let her live. Let her have a chance. Please. Nobody answered. The bathroom was silent except for my ragged breathing and the sound of water dripping from the faucet. Because of course nobody answered. I was praying to nothing, begging emptiness to intervene, hoping that somewhere in the vast, indifferent cosmos, something gave a damn about one broken soldier and his family. It was pathetic. It was pointless. But it was all I had left. I pulled myself up, splashed water on my face, looked at myself in the mirror. The man staring back looked decades older than he had 9 days ago. Eyes haunted, face gaunt, a stranger wearing Jake Morrison's features. You need to pull it together, I told my reflection. You need to function. For Sarah, for Emma. They need you to be their husband and father, even if you don't know how to be those things anymore. The stranger in the mirror didn't respond, just stared back with dead eyes. I went to the bedroom, lay down next to Sarah in the dark. She didn't say anything, just moved closer, rested her head on my chest, and I lay there awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling her breath on my skin, and wondering if this was the last normal moment we'd ever have. Wondering if tomorrow or next week or next year, I'd wake up to find harvest platforms in the sky. Wondering if I should tell her everything now, prepare her for what's coming, or let her stay ignorant and happy for as long as possible. Wondering if knowledge really was better than blissful ignorance, or if Kael'thas had done me a cruelty by opening my eyes to the truth. I still don't have answers to those questions. It's been 3 months since Area 51. 3 months of pretending to be normal, going through the motions, smiling when I'm supposed to smile, acting like everything is fine. But inside, I'm dying. Inside, I'm carrying this weight that gets heavier every day. The knowledge that humanity is on borrowed time. That we're all walking dead people who just don't know it yet. That unless we somehow unify, which we won't, we're too divided, too tribal, too goddamn human, we're going to be harvested like wheat at the end of summer. And I'm recording this because I can't carry it alone anymore. Because I need someone else to know. Because maybe, just maybe, if enough people hear this story and believe it, we can do what that other species did. We can transcend. We can become something unexpected. Something worth keeping. It's a long shot. It's probably impossible. But it's the only hope we have. So share this. Spread it. Make it go viral. Force people to confront what we really are. Where we really came from. What's really coming for us. Will most people think I'm insane? Yes. Will I probably end up dead or disappeared for sharing this? Almost certainly. But what choice do I have? Sit quiet and wait for the end? Watch my daughter get deleted while I did nothing to try to stop it? No. I'd rather die trying than live waiting. I'd rather be the crazy man who shouted truth into the void than the sane man who kept silent while humanity sleepwalked into extinction. This is my choice, my rebellion, my gift to you. The same gift Kael'thas gave me. The truth. Terrible, beautiful, unbearable truth. What you do with it is up to you. But at least now you know. At least now you can't say you weren't warned. The harvest is coming, and we're running out of time to prove we're worth saving. It started small. Little things I noticed in the weeks after coming home that I couldn't ignore once I started looking. I'd always been observant. Combat medic training does that to you, teaches you to notice details that others miss. But now I was seeing patterns everywhere. Patterns that confirmed what Kael'thas had told me. Patterns that proved I wasn't crazy, that the harvest was real, that time was running out. The first thing I noticed was the increase in UFO sightings. Not the usual crackpot reports you see on conspiracy websites, but legitimate military encounters that were suddenly being acknowledged by the Pentagon. Videos released showing Navy pilots tracking objects that moved in ways our physics couldn't explain. Congressional hearings about unidentified aerial phenomena. Officials using language like, "We can't rule out non-human intelligence," when a year ago they would have laughed at the suggestion. Kael'thas had said the signs were already appearing, that the architects were positioning their harvest platforms, making themselves more visible as they prepared for the evaluation. And here it was, happening in real time, and nobody was connecting the dots. Everyone was treating it like a curiosity, like entertainment, not understanding what it really meant, that the observation period was ending, that the test was almost over, that judgment day was approaching. The second thing was the technology leaps. I started researching, spending hours every night after Sarah and Emma went to bed, diving down rabbit holes on the internet, connecting pieces that shouldn't fit together but did, quantum computing advancing at rates that made no sense given our theoretical understanding, AI developing capabilities that experts said were decades away, medical breakthroughs that seemed to come from nowhere, CRISPR gene editing suddenly working better than anyone predicted, cancer treatments that were impossibly effective, longevity research making leaps that defied explanation. Kael'thas had mentioned this too, that the architects gave gifts to accelerate species toward the evaluation threshold. Technology that seemed like human innovation, but was really seeded knowledge, planted ideas, guided discoveries. They wanted us to reach a certain level of advancement before the harvest, wanted us developed enough to be worth evaluating, and we were getting there fast. Too fast. I found patterns in the timeline of discoveries. Major breakthroughs clustered around the same periods, coming from different research teams across the globe who claimed they'd had sudden insights, moments of clarity, dreams that showed them the solution. Dreams. Just like the ancient prophets received instructions in dreams. Just like the architects had always operated, whispering in the minds of receptive individuals, guiding humanity along their desired path. The third thing, the thing that made my blood run cold, was the government preparation. I still had contacts in the military, guys I'd served with who were now stationed at various bases, working on various projects. I reached out carefully, asked casual questions, pieced together information from conversations that seemed innocent, but revealed a bigger picture. Bunker construction had ramped up dramatically in the last 5 years. Not just Area 51, that was just one facility in a network that spanned the globe. Deep underground complexes being built under the guise of various cover stories, continuity of government protocols, nuclear war preparation, pandemic response centers. But the scale was wrong. The resources being poured into these projects were excessive for their stated purposes, unless the real purpose was something else, unless they were building arks, modern Noah's arks designed to preserve a fraction of humanity while the rest got deleted. One of my contacts, a logistics officer at NORAD, mentioned something in passing that he shouldn't have. Said they'd been running drills for selective population preservation scenarios. Drills on how to evacuate specific individuals, scientists, genetic specimens, people with particular skill sets, while leaving the rest of the population to whatever catastrophe was coming. When I pressed him on what kind of catastrophe required selective preservation, he got uncomfortable, changed the subject, ended the call quickly. But I'd heard enough. They knew. The government, the military, the people in power. They knew about the harvest. They'd probably known for decades. And they were preparing to save themselves while letting everyone else die. I wanted to be wrong. God, I wanted so badly to be wrong. To be paranoid, delusional, seeing patterns that didn't exist because my mind had broken at Area 51. So I did something stupid. I tried to go back. 3 weeks ago I drove out to Nevada, parked at that same gas station where they'd dropped me, and tried to retrace the route to the facility. I didn't get far. Maybe 15 miles past the city limits, an unmarked car started following me. 5 miles after that, 2 more joined. By the time I reached the turnoff toward where I thought the facility might be, there were 5 vehicles boxing me in, forcing me to pull over on the shoulder of the highway. Men in dark suits, not tactical gear this time, but the effect was the same, approached my car. One of them, a guy with graying temples and dead eyes, leaned into my window. "Staff Sergeant Morrison," he said, not asked. "You seem to be lost. This road doesn't go anywhere interesting. I suggest you turn around and head home." "I'm just driving," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Last I checked, that wasn't illegal." "It's not," he agreed. "But getting too curious about things that are above your clearance level? That can be very unhealthy. You signed documents, Sergeant. You made promises. I'd hate to see you have an accident out here in the desert. Long way from help. Easy for a car to run off the road, catch fire. Real tragedy. Your wife and daughter would be devastated." The threat was explicit, crystal clear. They were watching me, tracking my movements, and they weren't afraid to let me know that my family's safety depended on my silence. I turned the car around and drove home, checking my rearview mirror the whole way, seeing those unmarked vehicles following at a distance until I was safely back in Las Vegas. That night I couldn't sleep at all. Lay in bed next to Sarah, thinking about how easy it would be for them to make me disappear. An accident, a suicide, a random mugging gone wrong. No one would question it. And Sarah and Emma would never know the truth about what I'd learned, what I'd tried to warn people about. That's when I decided to make this recording, to get everything out while I still could, to create a document that would survive even if I didn't. I've made copies, lots of copies, hidden in different places, sent to different people using anonymous email accounts and encrypted file sharing. If something happens to me, this information gets released. It's my insurance policy. My way of fighting back against people who have all the power and want to keep me silent. But I'm not staying silent. Not anymore. Because the evidence keeps mounting. Because the timeline keeps accelerating. Because I can feel it coming. That moment when the harvest begins, and I refuse to go quietly into that cosmic deletion. 2 nights ago, something happened that confirmed I'm not insane. I was outside, couldn't sleep again, standing in my backyard staring at the stars, and I saw them. Objects in the sky moving in formation, too high to be planes, too coordinated to be satellites. 7 of them, arranged in a geometric pattern, hovering completely motionless for maybe 5 minutes. Then they moved, not gradually but instantly, jumping from one position to another like someone was editing reality itself. They held that new formation for another few minutes, then vanished. Not flew away, vanished. Like they'd switched off their visibility or shifted into a dimension I couldn't perceive. I grabbed my phone, tried to record it, but of course the video came out as nothing but dark sky and blur. They have technology that prevents clear documentation. That's why all UFO footage is always grainy, always unclear. It's intentional. They let us see enough to know they're there, but not enough to prove it definitively, not enough to cause mass panic before they're ready. I stood there shaking, phone in hand, staring at empty sky, and whispered, "I see you. I know what you're doing. I know what's coming." And maybe it was my imagination, but I swear I felt something, a presence, an acknowledgement, like they heard me, like they wanted me to know they heard me. Maybe it was Kael'thas somehow, his consciousness lingering in whatever space the architects occupy. Or maybe it was them, the architects themselves, amused by this one human who knew their secret and was powerless to do anything about it. But here's the thing, I'm not powerless. None of us are. Kael'thas told me about that one species that transcended, that unified and proved themselves valuable in unexpected ways. He said we had to find our own path, our own answer to the question of how to become unharvestable. And I think I know what that answer is. It's consciousness. It's awareness. It's choosing to be more than the sum of our programming. The architects designed us, yes. Guided our evolution, yes. Manipulated our development through religion and technology, yes. But somewhere along the way, something unexpected happened. We became self-aware in ways they didn't anticipate. We developed the ability to question our own existence, to seek truth, even when that truth destroys us, to create meaning in a meaningless universe. That's what makes humans valuable. Not our technology, not our intelligence, our stubborn, irrational refusal to accept the limitations of our design, our capacity to love things we know we'll lose, our ability to hope when hope is illogical, our tendency to rebel against authority, even cosmic authority. That's what Kael'thas saw in us. That's why he broke protocol to tell me the truth, because he recognized that humans, for all our flaws and violence and stupidity, possess something the architects can't fully control or predict, the ability to choose who we become. So here's what I think we need to do. We need to wake up, all of us, not just to the reality of our origins. That's important, but it's not enough. We need to wake up to our potential, to what we could become if we stopped fighting each other and started fighting for each other. If we took all the energy we waste on tribal conflicts and religious wars and political divisions and focused it on a single question, how do we transcend? How do we evolve beyond what the architects designed us to be? How do we become something so unexpected, so unprecedented, that the harvest protocols don't apply to us? I don't have all the answers. I'm just a combat medic from Texas who got in way over his head. But I know this, if we stay divided, we die. If we stay asleep, we die. If we stay comfortable in our manufactured religions and our prescribed meanings and our designed purposes, we die. But if we wake up, if we choose to become conscious of what we are and then consciously decide to become something more, maybe, just maybe, we survive. Maybe we prove that consciousness, once it emerges, can't be put back in the box. Can't be deleted like bad data. Can't be harvested like crops at the end of season. Maybe we prove we're not experiments anymore. We're something new, something the architects never anticipated, something that deserves to exist not because they created us, but because we created ourselves. Because we chose to be more than our programming. Because we looked at the truth about our origins and said, okay, but that doesn't define our destination. Is this hopeful? I don't know. Some days I think I'm delusional, grasping at straws, trying to find meaning in a situation that's utterly hopeless. Other days I think Kael'thas was right to gamble on us, to bet that humans might surprise everyone one more time. What I do know is this. I'd rather die fighting for that small chance than live waiting for inevitable deletion. I'd rather spend my remaining time trying to wake people up, trying to push humanity toward unity and transcendence, even if I fail spectacularly, because at least then I'll know I tried. At least then, when the harvest comes, I can look at Emma and tell her I did everything I could to give her a future, even if that future never materializes, even if the harvest platforms descend and we all get deleted except for the chosen few hiding in their underground arcs. At least I'll know I fought. I know most of you listening to this think I'm crazy. I know this sounds like the ravings of someone who had a psychotic break and built an elaborate delusion system to explain it. I understand that. If I heard this story from someone else, I'd probably think the same thing. But ask yourself, What if I'm not crazy? What if everything I'm telling you is true? What if the harvest is real and coming soon? Can you afford to dismiss this? Can you afford to go back to sleep? Or do you need to at least consider the possibility, however remote, that a combat medic named Jake Morrison really did meet an alien at Area 51, really did learn the truth about human origins, really is trying to warn you about what's coming? I'm not asking you to believe me completely. I'm asking you to be open to the possibility, to look at the evidence around you, the increasing UFO disclosures, the impossible technology leaps, the government preparations, the strange lights in the sky, to connect the dots the way I did. And if you see the pattern, if you recognize the truth hidden in plain sight, then do something. Share this recording, have conversations, plant seeds of awareness. Because even if I'm wrong, even if this is all delusion, the act of questioning our purpose, of seeking unity, of trying to transcend our limitations, those are good things regardless. Those make us better, even if there's no harvest coming. And if I'm right, if the architects are really positioning their platforms, then every person who wakes up, every mind that opens, every moment of unity we achieve, that's resistance, that's rebellion, that's proof we're more than our programming, that's hope in a situation that seems hopeless. 2 more parts left, 2 more pieces of this story to tell you before I'm done, before they come for me or before I run out of time or before whatever happens next happens. Part 12 will be my final message, my last words, the thing I need Emma to hear if I don't survive this. But first, Part 11 ends with this. If you're listening, if you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you for considering the possibility that everything you believe might be wrong. Thank you for being brave enough to question. That's the first step toward transcendence. That's the beginning of our salvation. Or at least, it's the beginning of trying. And trying is all we've got left. It's 3:47 a.m. I'm sitting in my car parked 3 blocks from my house because I can't risk recording this inside where Sarah might hear. The street is empty, dark except for a few porch lights and the orange glow of street lamps. I've been watching my rearview mirror for the last hour, looking for those unmarked cars, but so far nothing. Maybe they don't know I'm making this recording. Maybe they're waiting to see what I do with it. Or maybe they're already positioning themselves to make their move, and I'm running out of time faster than I realize. My hands are shaking as I hold this phone. Not from fear, I'm past fear now, but from exhaustion. I haven't slept more than 2 hours a night in weeks. Every time I close my eyes, I see those harvest platforms, those beams of light descending, Emma's face as she ceases to exist. I'm barely holding it together. Sarah knows something's seriously wrong. She's been asking me to see a therapist, a psychiatrist, anyone who might help. Yesterday, she found the research I've been doing, printouts and notes scattered across my desk, drawings of the orbital structures Kyle showed me, timelines connecting UFO sightings to technology breakthroughs. She looked at it all with this expression of horror and pity, like she was watching me lose my mind in real time. "Jake," she'd said quietly, gathering up the papers, "this isn't healthy. This obsession with aliens and conspiracies, it's not you. You need help. Professional help." I almost told her everything right then. Almost grabbed her shoulders and forced her to listen to the truth about what I'd seen, what I'd learned, what was coming for us all. But I looked at her face, the worry, the love, the desperate hope that her husband could be saved from whatever madness had consumed him, and I couldn't do it. Couldn't shatter her world the way mine had been shattered. Couldn't make her carry this weight. So I lied. Told her she was right, that I'd make an appointment, that I'd get help. She hugged me, relieved, and I held her close, memorizing the feel of her in my arms, because I know now that I'm not going to be around much longer. Either they'll come for me, or the truth I'm sharing will spread far enough that I become too dangerous to leave alive, or I'll do something drastic that forces their hand. One way or another, this ends soon, and I need to say some things before it does. Things to the people I love, things to the world, things that need to be said even if nobody listens. First, to Sarah. Baby, if you're hearing this, it means I'm gone. It means they got to me, or I had to run, or something happened that prevented me from coming home. I need you to know that everything I did, every crazy thing you saw me doing these last few months, it was because I was trying to protect you, trying to protect Emma, trying to protect everyone. I know you think I lost my mind at Area 51, and maybe I did. Maybe none of this is real, and I really am just a broken veteran with PTSD and delusions. But if there's even a chance I'm right, if there's even the smallest possibility that what I learned is true, then I had to try, had to warn people. Had to fight against what's coming, even if that fight was hopeless from the start. You asked me if I could still love you after what I saw. The truth is, I love you more now than I ever did before. Because now I understand how precious love is. How miraculous it is that in a universe so vast and indifferent, two people can find each other and choose to care. That's not programming. That's not the architect's design. That's something we created ourselves. That's proof we're more than what we were made to be. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You gave me a reason to keep fighting even when I wanted to give up. And Emma, God, Emma, our perfect, beautiful daughter. She's the reason all of this matters. The reason I'm willing to look crazy, to risk everything, to keep pushing even when it would be easier to stay quiet. Take care of her. Tell her daddy loved her more than anything. Tell her daddy tried to make the world better, even if he failed. Tell her to be brave, to question everything, to never accept easy answers. And tell her I'm sorry I couldn't be there to watch her grow up. Second, to my father. Dad, I know you're probably listening to this thinking I've lost my faith, that the devil got hold of me somehow, that your son abandoned God, but I didn't abandon God. I just learned that God isn't who we thought he was. The thing is, Dad, everything you taught me about love and compassion and helping others, that was real. That mattered. The good you did as a pastor, the people you helped, the comfort you brought to those who were suffering, none of that was a lie, even if the foundation was. You were a good man, a great father, and nothing I learned at Area 51 changes that. You lived your truth as best you could, and you made the world better for it. That's all any of us can do. Live our truth, help where we can, love as much as possible. And if it turns out there's no heaven waiting, no divine reward for a life well lived, then at least we'll know we lived with purpose, with meaning we chose for ourselves. I love you, Dad. Thank you for everything you gave me, even if the cross around my neck turned out to be a symbol of something different than we believed. Thank you for teaching me that symbols matter, that belief matters, that fighting for something bigger than yourself matters. Those lessons are still true, even if God isn't. Third, to Emma. Princess, you're probably too young to understand this now, but one day you'll be old enough to hear this recording, and I need you to know some things. I need you to know that your daddy wasn't crazy. Or if I was crazy, it was the kind of crazy that comes from caring too much, from seeing something terrible and refusing to look away. When you're older, you're going to hear people tell you how the world works. They'll tell you about God, about science, about what's real and what's not. And I want you to listen to them, but I also want you to question them. Ask why. Ask how they know. Don't accept easy answers just because they're comfortable. The truth is usually uncomfortable, usually complicated, usually something that makes you reconsider everything you thought you knew. But it's still worth seeking, still worth the cost of finding it. You're going to face choices, Emma. Choices about who you want to be, what you want to believe, how you want to live. And I won't be there to guide you through those choices. But I can tell you this: choose consciousness over comfort. Choose questions over certainty. Choose growth over safety. Those are the choices that make us human, that make us more than our programming. And never, never let anyone tell you that you don't matter, that your life is insignificant, that you're just one person in a universe too big to care. You matter. Every choice you make ripples outward in ways you can't see. Every act of kindness, every moment of love, every time you choose to be better than you have to be, that changes the world, changes the universe, proves that consciousness itself is valuable, regardless of where it came from. Fourth, to anyone listening who thinks I'm lying, making this up, seeking attention or money or fame, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to consider the possibility, to look at the evidence around you and ask yourself, what if he's right? What if there really are beings out there observing us, manipulating us, preparing to harvest us? Would you want to know? Would you want a chance to fight back? Or would you prefer comfortable ignorance? I understand the appeal of ignorance. God, do I understand. Some days I wish I'd never been called to Area 51. Wish I'd never met Kael'thas. Wish I could still pray without feeling like I'm talking to empty air. Wish I could look at my daughter without seeing her potential deletion. But I can't unknow what I know. Can't unsee what I've seen. And since I have to carry this weight, the least I can do is offer to share it. Offer you the same terrible gift Kael'thas gave me. The truth. What you do with that gift is up to you. Dismiss it as crazy. Investigate it for yourself. Share it with others. Or forget about it entirely. And go back to your normal life. All valid choices. But you can't say you weren't warned. You can't say nobody tried to tell you. When the harvest comes, if the harvest comes, remember that someone tried. Remember that a broken combat medic from Texas saw what was coming and did his best to sound the alarm, even knowing most people would think he was insane. Fifth, to the people at Area 51, to Colonel Bradley and Dr. Chen and everyone who knows the truth and keeps it buried, I understand why you do what you do. I understand the logic of keeping people ignorant, keeping society stable, preventing the mass panic that would come if everyone knew what I know. You think you're protecting humanity, giving us our best chance at survival by keeping us calm and functional until the harvest. And maybe you're right. Maybe knowing would destroy us faster than the architects ever could. But maybe you're wrong. Maybe we're stronger than you think. Maybe we deserve the chance to fight for ourselves instead of having our fate decided by a select few hiding in bunkers. You made me sign papers, threatened my family, followed me, intimidated me, but you didn't silence me. This recording exists now. Copies exist. The truth is out there, spreading like the water through cracks that Casualties described. You can come after me, and I know you will, but you can't stop the information now. It's too late. The observation period is over. And humanity deserves to know before the evaluation begins. We deserve a chance to prove ourselves, to transcend, to become something you never anticipated. So come get me if you need to. Make me disappear. Add me to the list of people who knew too much and had accidents. But know that every person you silence, every truth you bury, every choice you make to keep humanity ignorant, that's not protection, that's control. That's you playing architect. And maybe you've become exactly what you claim to fight against. Finally, to Casualties, I don't know if you can hear me, wherever you are now. I don't know if consciousness survives death, even for beings as advanced as you were. But on the chance you're somehow aware, somewhere, I want you to know, thank you. Thank you for breaking protocol. Thank you for trusting me with the truth. Thank you for believing humanity might be worth saving. You were wrong about one thing, though. You said knowledge was a gift and a curse, that certainty was the death of faith. But you gave me something better than faith. You gave me purpose. Yes, I lost my belief in God. Yes, I can't pray the way I used to. Yes, everything I thought I knew about existence turned out to be manufactured. But in place of that comfortable lie, you gave me an uncomfortable truth. That consciousness, wherever it comes from, has value. That choice, even in a deterministic universe, means something. That love and compassion and sacrifice aren't less real just because they weren't divinely ordained. If anything, they're more real, more meaningful, because we chose them. Because in a universe that doesn't care if we love or hate, we chose to love anyway. That's the human miracle. That's what makes us worth keeping. And that's what I'm going to hold on to in whatever comes next. So thank you, my friend. Thank you for dying so that truth could live. I'll try to make it count. It's almost 5 a.m. now. The sky is starting to lighten in the east. In a few hours, Sarah and Emma will wake up. I'll go inside and make breakfast like everything is normal. I'll kiss my daughter and hug my wife and pretend that I'm not terrified of every passing day bringing us closer to the end. I'll act like a normal husband and father for as long as I can, because even if it's a performance, even if I'm faking normalcy while carrying cosmic horror inside, they deserve that effort. They deserve whatever peace I can give them. This recording ends here. 12 parts. 12 pieces of the most important story I'll ever tell. I'm uploading this now, sending it to multiple platforms, multiple people, releasing it into the digital void, and hoping it finds those who need to hear it. Tomorrow or next week or next month I'll probably be gone, disappeared, silenced, made into an example of what happens when you break the rules and tell forbidden truths. But this will remain. This testimony, this warning, this desperate attempt to wake people up before it's too late. Share it, discuss it, investigate it, question it. Just don't ignore it, because the harvest is coming, the platforms are positioning, the evaluation approaches, and we're running out of time to prove we deserve to survive. My name is Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison. I was sent to Area 51 after a crash. I met a dying alien named Casualties. He told me the truth about God, about creation, about humanity's origins, and its coming end. Everything I believed was wrong. Everything I knew was a lie. And now I'm telling you. Not because I want to destroy your faith or ruin your happiness or spread fear, but because you deserve to know. Because we all deserve a chance to fight. Because consciousness, once awakened, can't be put back to sleep. And because I'd rather die having tried to save us than live having stayed silent while we were deleted. The choice is yours now. What you do with this information, how you respond to what I've told you, whether you believe or dismiss or investigate, that's your choice, your consciousness, your rebellion. All I can do is plant the seed. The rest is up to you. So wake up. Please wake up. While there's still time, while we still have a chance, wake up and fight for the right to exist. Not as experiments, not as someone else's creation, but as conscious beings who choose their own meaning in a meaningless universe. That's the path to transcendence. That's how we survive the harvest. That's how we prove that humanity is worth keeping. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just a crazy veteran with PTSD, building elaborate delusions to cope with trauma. Maybe there's no harvest coming. Maybe God is real and loving and everything is going to be okay. I hope so. I really do. But just in case I'm right, remember this recording. Remember Jake Morrison. Remember that someone tried to warn you. And when you see lights in the sky that move impossibly, when the disclosure continues and the truth gets closer, when the signs become undeniable, remember you were given a chance to prepare. You were offered the terrible gift of knowledge. What you did with it determined not just your fate, but humanity's. Good luck to all of us. We're going to need it. This is Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison signing off. If you're listening to this, I'm probably already gone. But the truth remains. And the truth, terrible as it is, will set us free. Or it will destroy us. Either way, at least we'll know. At least we'll have chosen our fate with open eyes. That's all I ever wanted. That's all any of us should want. To face the universe as it really is, not as we wish it to be. And to fight, always fight, until the very end. Goodbye.